Tonight we enter the buried foundations of Uruk, where excavators uncovered something stranger than treasure evidence that the first city may have followed a deliberate design. German archaeologists began systematic work among these ruins during the early 20th century. Their trenches revealed layered temples, platforms, courtyards, workshops, and walls arranged across an immense settlement. Scholars connected with Oxford University and the British Museum have since examined how these remains transformed our understanding of early urban life. The stones are scarce because most buildings were made from mud brick, yet the surviving foundations still preserve choices made by people more than 5,000 years ago. Those choices form the mystery resting beneath your feet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You can also share your location and local time. It is pleasant to imagine listeners gathering quietly across the world while an ancient city rises from darkness. The air around Uruk feels dry enough to preserve silence itself. Dust settles inside shallow trenches, softening every sharp edge. The ground carries the pale colour of sun-baked clay. Nothing moves except a loose grain of sand sliding down an exposed wall. You stand where a doorway once opened. Its threshold leads nowhere now. The rooms beyond have vanished into low outlines pressed against the earth. Yet those outlines are not random. Walls meet at measured angles. Passageways narrow at deliberate points. Open spaces appear where crowds might once have gathered. Records from the excavations confirm that Uruk covered hundreds of hectares during its greatest expansion. That scale made it unlike the farming villages surrounding it. Thousands of people lived within a landscape shaped by human hands. They occupied neighbourhoods filled with houses, workshops, ceremonial buildings, storage areas, and roads. This was not merely a large settlement. It behaved like a new kind of organism. You feel that difference slowly. A village usually grows around families who know one another. Paths follow familiar habits, and homes gather near water or fields. Uruk contains something less personal and more unsettling. Its inhabitants must cooperate with strangers whom they may never meet. Someone must organize the movement of food. Someone must decide where walls stand. Someone must maintain public spaces after storms damage the clay. These decisions leave no voice behind, but they leave shapes. Archaeologists read those shapes patiently. A foundation trench may show that builders cleared older structures before raising something larger. A doorway sealed with bricks can reveal changing access. A wall rebuilt several times suggests that one boundary remained important across generations. Even rubbish deposits help identify where people cooked, worked, or gathered. You begin to understand that ruins are not silent. They simply speak through pressure, alignment, depth, and absence. The most imposing traces lie within the sacred districts. Massive platforms once lifted temples above surrounding roofs. Their surfaces gleamed with plaster under the Mesopotamian sun. From below, these buildings must have appeared almost weightless, although they rested upon mountains of packed clay. One sanctuary, often called the White Temple, stood high above the plain. Its elevated position made it visible across fields and canals. People approaching Uruk would have seen it long before reaching any gate. The structure announced that the city possessed a centre, both physically and symbolically. Its builders did not place it casually. They carried countless baskets of earth to create the platform. They shaped bricks by hand, dried them, transported them, and laid them in ordered courses. Such labour required coordination on a scale unknown in ordinary village life. The building itself becomes evidence of invisible administration. No surviving document names the first planner. Perhaps no single planner existed. Perhaps generations of priests, builders, and officials adjusted the city through repeated experiments. The blueprint may have lived in custom rather than parchment. That possibility makes the mystery deeper. Modern people imagine a blueprint as a drawing spread across a table. Lines appear first, followed by walls, streets, and doors. Uruk may have followed another kind of plan. Its design could have been remembered through measurements, rituals, work songs, and instructions spoken beside wet clay. A master builder might stretch a cord across level ground. Assistants could mark corners with wooden stakes. Labourers might follow units measured by hands, feet, ropes, or standard bricks. Nothing survives of the conversation, but the geometry remains. Some researchers have noticed repeated proportions among early monumental buildings. A few enthusiasts claim these proportions encode hidden celestial knowledge or a sacred mathematical system. That idea remains far beyond scholarly agreement. Still, the repeated alignments encourage careful curiosity. Ancient builders watched the sky closely. They observed shadows, seasons, stars, and the changing path of sunlight. It would be unsurprising if celestial ideas influenced important structures. The difficulty lies in proving intention from incomplete walls. Scholars continue debating whether Uruk was centrally planned or gradually organized through countless local choices. One interpretation emphasizes powerful institutions directing labor and construction. Another sees neighborhoods growing naturally, while major temples imposed order only upon certain districts. Both possibilities leave traces in the same soil. You move deeper into the imagined excavation. The rough surface beneath your fingers feels surprisingly fragile. Mud brick returns easily to dust when exposed. Entire buildings can dissolve until only differences in soil color reveal where walls once stood. This fragility explains why the first city remained hidden for so long. Stone monuments announce themselves across centuries. Clay architecture sinks back into the landscape that produced it. A palace can become a mound. A street can become a faint band of compacted earth. The city hides by becoming land again. Early travellers saw great mounds rising above the southern Mesopotamian plain. Local traditions attach stories to them, as people often do with places whose names have faded. Some believe strange kings, giants, or spirits had raised the buried structures. Such tales are not reliable history, yet they preserve an important instinct. Something immense once stood here. Excavation replaces the giant with thousands of ordinary workers. They carry clay beneath a punishing sun. They press mud into moulds. They lift baskets, repair walls, and smooth fresh plaster. Their names disappear, although their fingerprints sometimes remain upon bricks. One print may belong to a tired labourer, another may come from a child touching wet clay. These small marks disturb the grandeur of the city in a gentle way. They remind you that every monumental plan depended upon human bodies. The blueprint was never only geometry, it was also effort. You can almost hear sandals dragging across a courtyard, reed mats rustle inside shaded rooms, wooden tools strike packed earth with dull, steady sounds. Somewhere nearby, smoke carries the scent of cooking grain and river fish. Above everything rises the temple platform. Its presence organizes sight itself. Streets and open spaces do not need to point directly toward it. People simply know where it stands. The elevated sanctuary becomes a fixed reference within a changing city, much like a mountain created by human intention. That may be the first clue. A true city needs more than population. It requires shared systems that guide strangers through space. It needs boundaries, centers, routes, obligations, and meanings. Uruk appears to contain all of these, although their original arrangement survives only in fragments. You look across the exposed foundations and imagine the missing height. Walls rise again in your mind, roofs spread outward, courtyards fill with movement, narrow passages disappear between tall mud brick facades. Nothing is complete, yet the pattern begins to breathe. Perhaps the hidden blueprint was never a single secret plan guarded by rulers. Perhaps it was a collection of decisions repeated until they became tradition. Builders copied useful fossil forms. Officials protected important spaces. Worshippers followed familiar paths through courtyards and gates. Over time, habit hardened into architecture. The ruins offer no final answer. They preserve only the quiet certainty that Uruk did not grow without structure. Beneath its broken surfaces lies an intelligence distributed across generations, patient enough to shape an entire human landscape. You remain beside the ancient threshold. Evening gathers over the plain. The clay cools slowly beneath your hand, while the first city waits in Maung. Morning mist rests low over the southern plain, turning canals and reed beds into pale ribbons. You walk across ground that does not yet belong to a city. Small settlements sit apart from one another, each surrounded by gardens, grazing animals, and narrow plots of grain. No street has a name, no wall encloses the horizon. Families recognize each doorway because they recognize every person living behind it. The landscape appears simple, although simplicity can be deceptive. Beneath the quiet routines of planting, grinding, fishing and herding, a larger transformation has begun. Separate communities are drawing closer through trade, marriage, worship, and shared dependence upon water. The soil feels damp beneath your sandals. Irrigation channels cut through the fields, carrying brown river water toward rows of barley. Their banks require constant repair. A broken embankment can drown one plot while leaving another completely dry. Water creates cooperation because water refuses to respect private wishes. Archaeological surveys led by researchers from the University of Chicago mapped hundreds of ancient settlements across southern Mesopotamia. Their findings showed that populations gradually concentrated into fewer, larger centers. Villages did not simply become crowded overnight. People moved, merged, and reorganized across many generations. Some hamlets disappeared entirely, others expanded until neighboring communities became difficult to distinguish. A shrine, market area, or canal junction could pull scattered households toward one shared center. You can imagine the process without hearing any official announcement. A potter chooses a home near reliable clay deposits. A fisher settles beside a busier landing place. A family moves closer to relatives after a poor harvest. Each decision seems personal. Together, they reshape the world. Paths begin as footprints pressed through grass and dust. Repeated journeys deepen them. Donkeys carry baskets along the same route. Children follow adults toward wells, fields, and courtyards. Rain briefly turns these tracks into mud. Summer hardens them again. Over time, the paths become permanent expectations. People build beside them because movement already flows there. This is how space acquires memory. A stranger arriving from another settlement may not understand the pattern immediately. Residents know which path leads toward grain stores and which ends beside a drainage ditch. They recognize where animals should pass and where ceremonial gatherings interrupt ordinary traffic. There are still no signs. The settlement speaks through habit. Smoke rises from clustered rooftops, carrying the scent of dung fuel and roasted grain. Dogs bark near storage jars. Somewhere, a stone grinder turns with a slow scraping sound. The village is becoming louder. Population growth brings opportunity, but it also brings irritation. Neighbours compete for shade, water access, and space near useful paths. Waste accumulates beside walls. Animals wander through courtyards where they are not especially welcome. Urban life may begin with grand temples in popular imagination. In practice, it probably begins with somebody complaining about another household's goat. That small absurdity matters. Shared space requires rules long before rulers carve laws into stone. People establish customs concerning wells, boundaries, drainage, and access. These customs may be spoken by elders, enforced by families, or remembered through ritual. A council decision can redirect a channel. A marriage can unite two neighborhoods. A dispute can divide them for decades. Yale University scholars studying early Mesopotamian institutions have emphasized the importance of households in this transformation. Large families were not merely private groups. They produced goods, controlled labor, maintained property, and formed alliances. Some households became wealthier than others. Their buildings expanded around courtyards. Their storage rooms held larger quantities of grain, oil, wool, or dried fish. Difference enters quietly. One doorway gains a decorated threshold, another remains plain. One family owns several animals, another depends upon seasonal labour. The settlement now contains social distance, even when every roof remains physically close. You pass a cluster of workshops where clay vessels dry in the heat. Potters shape bowls quickly, producing forms that appear across many sites. Standard shapes suggest shared habits and growing exchange networks. One especially common vessel is the beveled rim bowl. Archaeologists have uncovered these rough containers in extraordinary numbers. They were made rapidly, often with little concern for elegance. Their exact purpose remains debated. Many researchers believe they held food rations for workers. Others suggest they were used for bread, grain measurement, or several ordinary tasks. A fringe theory once proposed that some bowls were designed as disposable containers for ritual offerings. The idea is difficult to prove, although it suits the human desire to make even plain pottery mysterious. The bowls themselves remain stubbornly ordinary. That ordinariness reveals something important. Large communities require repeated objects, predictable portions, and familiar procedures. A unique handmade vessel belongs easily within a household. Thousands of similar bowls belong to a system. You lift one in your imagination. Its surface feels coarse, the rim is uneven, and the clay contains visible plant fibers. It is not beautiful. It may still represent a revolution. Food can now be divided according to those recognized units. Workers may receive portions without knowing the farmer who grew the grain. Exchange becomes less personal and more organized. The settlement is learning how to function among strangers. As communities merge, older loyalties do not vanish. People still identify with families, local shrines, occupations, and ancestral traditions. A growing centre must hold these identities together without completely erasing them. Festivals offer one solution. Seasonal gatherings bring scattered groups into shared ceremonial spaces. Music, food, incense, and procession create temporary unity. You hear drums across the fields at dusk. Torches move beside a canal. Families approach from different directions, carrying baskets and small offerings. For several hours, separate settlements behave like one people. Religion may provide a common language where kinship no longer reaches everyone. A central shrine belongs to a deity, but it also belongs to the community gathering around that deity. Oxford researchers examining early sacred architecture have argued that temples often develop through repeated rebuilding. Each new structure preserved something from the older one while enlarging its public role. A modest shrine can become a landmark can become an institution can attract workers, supplies, and authority. Still, scholars disagree about what drives concentration most strongly. Some emphasize irrigation management and the need for coordinated labor. Others focus on trade, religious attraction, warfare, or environmental pressure. No single explanation settles the matter. Climate shifts may have pushed families toward dependable waterways. Trade routes may have rewarded settlements controlling river junctions. Rival communities may have sought safety through numbers. Human motives rarely travel alone. You notice fields stretching farther from the houses. Farmers walk longer distances to reach them. Herds must pass through increasingly crowded paths. Storage moves inward, where grain can be watched and counted. The relationship between home and landscape changes. People no longer live directly beside every resource they use. Instead, goods move toward them through networks. Fish arrive from marshes. Timber arrives from distant regions. Stone travels from places beyond the flat horizon. The growing settlement becomes dependent upon unseen lands. That dependence makes it powerful and vulnerable. A village can survive through local knowledge. A larger centre requires continuous movement across greater distances. Boats must arrive. Canals must remain open. Agreements must hold. The air thickens with dust as more feet cross the same ground. Homes stand closer together, their exterior walls creating narrow corridors. Open fields withdraw toward the edges. One path bends around an old shrine, another widens near a busy landing place. A third ends where newer houses block its original route. There is no perfect plan here. There is accumulation. Generations leave decisions embedded in space. A respected courtyard remains open because gatherings have always occurred there. A narrow passage survives because property boundaries resist change. The future city grows around inherited inconvenience. That too feels strangely familiar. Night settles across the joined settlements. Cooking fires appear in hundreds of courtyards, forming a scattered constellation upon the earth. Voices mingle where silence once separated one village from another. You stand at the edge of this expanding human world. Nothing announces that the city has arrived. There is only a growing density of roofs, paths, obligations, and strangers. Yet somewhere within the gathering complexity, village life has crossed an invisible boundary. The first streets are already forming. They simply do not have names. The Euphrates moves with a patience that hides its power. You stand beside brown water sliding beneath a pale sky, while reeds tremble along the bank. The river appears calm, yet every field, doorway, and storehouse depends upon its uncertain course. Its scent reaches you first. Wet clay, fish scales, crushed reeds, and sun-warmed silt mingle in the morning air. Insects hover above the shallows. A narrow boat passes quietly, its hull brushing against floating stems. The river does not merely border the settlement. It chooses where life can continue. Southern Mesopotamia receives little dependable rainfall. Crops survive because water is guided from the Euphrates into channels cut across the plain. Farmers open small gates in earthen banks, allowing water to spread between rows of barley. The work seems peaceful from a distance. Up close, every channel demands attention. Silt gathers along the bottom. Banks crack beneath heat. Burrowing animals weaken the walls during the night. A neglected canal quickly becomes useless. Men and women enter the mud with baskets, wooden tools, and woven mats. They clear blockages, strengthen embankments, and argue over whose field receives water first. Children carry clay to damaged sections, learning the rules through repetition. Nobody can command the river completely. They can only persuade it. Geological studies published in Nature confirm that ancient Mesopotamian waterways shifted repeatedly across the alluvial plain. Channels divided, narrowed, changed direction, and sometimes abandoned entire districts. A thriving settlement could lose its lifeline within several generations. This instability shapes every decision. Houses cluster near dependable branches, but not so close that floods destroy them. Storage buildings rise on firmer ground. Canals enter the inhabited area through carefully chosen approaches. The city develops around moving water. You watch a surveyor push a straight reed into soft earth. Another worker stretches a cord toward a distant marker. Their measurements determine the direction of a new channel. The task requires practical knowledge rather than elegant theory. Water must descend gently enough to flow, but not so sharply that it tears through the banks. A mistake can ruin months of labour. The ground is almost flat. That makes every small difference important. A channel dug slightly too deep may drain surrounding fields. One cut too shallow may fill with silt before the harvest. Experienced workers read the earth through colour, texture, moisture, and the behaviour of standing water. Their knowledge lives in hands. The Euphrates also carries the world toward Uruk. Boats arrive loaded with grain, wool, reeds, clay vessels, dates, and dried fish. Other cargo travels from far beyond the southern plain. Timber descends from northern regions. Stone arrives from distant mountains. Metals pass through chains of exchange connecting communities that may never meet. The river becomes a moving road. You hear boatmen calling from the landing place, ropes tighten against wooden posts. Porters step through shallow water and lift baskets onto their shoulders. A dock is not a quiet place, animals complain, officials count, and merchants insist that every damaged jar was already cracked. The mud remembers thousands of feet. Reed boats serve ordinary traffic along canals and marshes. Larger vessels carry heavier cargo along deeper channels. Some hulls are coated with bitumen, a dark natural substance that helps resist water. A quirky theory suggests certain boat shapes inspired ancient images of heavenly vessels crossing the night sky. Scholars remain cautious, since similar forms can arise from simple practical design. Still, the resemblance is pleasing. A black hull gliding beneath stars could easily become a sacred symbol in a tired storyteller's mind. Trade brings wealth, but it also creates dependence. Builders require timber that does not grow locally in useful quantities. Toolmakers need stone and metal absent from the nearby plain. The city cannot remain isolated. Its prosperity relies upon distant landscapes, cooperative traders, and navigable waterways. A blocked route affects workshops far from the obstruction. A failed shipment delays construction, weakens exchange, and raises the value of stored goods. The river carries opportunity and anxiety together. Along its banks, officials may supervise cargo entering the settlement. Seals pressed into clay identify containers, storerooms, or responsible institutions. Boats become part of an administrative world as soon as their goods touch land. Movement must be recorded. A vessel carrying grain represents more than food. It contains labour from distant fields, agreements between communities, and expectations about payment. Every basket belongs to a chain of obligations. The Euphrates links these obligations through space. You follow a canal curving toward the inhabited centre. Houses stand close to the water, their rear walls rising above narrow banks. Steps descend towards small mooring places. Women rinse vessels near the edge. Fishermen repair nets beneath patches of shade. Children launch pieces of reed and watch them drift toward a culvert. Daily life leans toward the channel. Water carries refuse away, although never quite as efficiently as residents might hope. It supplies workshops where clay is mixed, wool is washed, and hides are treated. Some activities produce odours strong enough to encourage separation. Tanneries and the fish processing areas likely gather where water access and favourable winds reduce discomfort. Urban order often begins with practical avoidance. A city wall must also negotiate the river. Defensive lines cannot simply ignore channels entering the settlement. Gates, bridges, and protected openings become necessary wherever water crosses a boundary. Such openings create weakness, they also create life. A sealed city would starve behind its own defences. Engineers must allow boats, water, people, and goods to pass without surrendering control. The solution may involve guarded quays, narrow entrances, raised banks, and walls following natural waterways. Researchers at Yale University have noted that early Mesopotamian defences often served several purposes at once. They protected inhabitants, marked civic territory, controlled movement, and sometimes helped manage floodwater. A wall could be military, symbolic, and hydraulic at the same time. The exact relationship between Uruk and the Euphrates remains debated. Some scholars believe a major river branch flowed close beside the city during its greatest expansion. Others suggest canals connected Uruk to a more distant channel. The ancient landscape has changed too greatly for certainty. Riverbeds wander, silt buries landing places, later canals cut across earlier ones. Modern agriculture alters surfaces that once preserved subtle evidence. The map refuses to remain still. You feel that uncertainty beneath your feet. What appears to be dry ground may once have held flowing water. A low ridge may mark an old levee formed by repeated floods. The city's buried shape cannot be understood without reconstructing vanished channels. Streets, walls, and districts may have followed waterways no longer visible. The river wrote part of the plan. Floods bring danger. Yet they also renew the soil. Fine sediment spreads across low ground, leaving fields fertile when water retreats. Too little flooding weakens harvests. Too much destroys houses and drowns crops. Balance remains delicate. Priests watch seasonal signs. Farmers study water levels. Officials organize repairs and gather labor. Families store grain against years when the river behaves badly. There is no complete safety. At sunset, the water turns copper beneath the fading light. Boats become dark silhouettes moving between reed-lined banks. Smoke from cooking fires settles over the channel. You hear oars dipping at regular intervals. The sound travels farther as evening quiets the city. For a moment, every household seems connected by that rhythm. The Euphrates feeds fields, carries traders, shapes defences, and determines where streets can grow for. Its influence reaches temples, workshops, courtyards, and distant markets. It is not a background feature, it is the city's hidden spine. People believe they have redirected the river through canals and banks. Perhaps they have, for a season. Yet the Euphrates continues choosing which channels endure, which fields remain fertile, and which settlements fade into dust. The blueprint rests upon water, and water never promises permanence. The wall beside you looks plain at first, only a low band of hardened earth beneath the sun. Then your eyes adjust, individual bricks emerge from the surface, each one shaped by a hand that vanished thousands of years ago. Their edges are softened by time. Some remain square, while others have slumped into irregular forms, yet the repeated pattern still survives. Mud brick is humble material. It begins with wet earth, chopped reeds, water, and patient labour. The mixture is pressed into moulds, lifted carefully, and left beneath the open sky. Nothing about the process seems mysterious. The result, however, changes the scale of human building. A family can shape a few bricks for a house. A city requires thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then quantities almost impossible to imagine. The bricks must share similar dimensions. Walls need stable courses. Doorways require predictable spans. Platforms must rise evenly across wide foundations. Standardization enters through necessity. You kneel beside a surviving wall and run your fingers across a shallow joint. The mortar is nearly the same material as the brick itself. Layers of clay bind blocks that were never fired in a kiln. This creates both strength and weakness. When dry, the walls stand firm beneath their own weight. When rain arrives, exposed surfaces begin to soften. Builders protect them with plaster, reed matting, and constant repair. A city made from mud must always be rebuilding itself. Records from early excavations confirm that several brick shapes appeared during different periods at Uruk. Changes in size and form help archaeologists identify building phases, even when walls seem otherwise similar. Researchers at Oxford University have examined how construction sequences reveal social organisation. A new brick form can signal more than a technical preference. It may reflect revised labour methods, altered building traditions, or new institutions directing work. You begin to see each brick as a unit of information. Its length suggests a mould. Its surface reveals how wet the clay remained during shaping. Finger marks show where a worker lifted it. Some bricks carry impressions from reeds or mats laid beneath them. Others contain bits of straw, shell, or plant fibre mixed into the clay. These inclusions are not careless accidents. They help reduce cracking as the brick dries. The method is practical, repeatable, and easy to teach. A worker does not need rare tools. He needs earth, water, a mould, and knowledge passed through demonstration. That simplicity makes expansion possible. Groups can shape bricks near construction areas, reducing transport across crowded ground. Labourers mix clay in pits, while others carry finished blocks toward rising walls. The work develops a rhythm. Water splashes into the mixture. Wooden moulds strike the ground. Fresh bricks are set in rows beneath the heat. The air smells of wet soil. Supervisors may count completed batches, inspect sizes, or assign workers to different tasks. A large project cannot rely upon every person improvising freely. Someone decides how thick a wall should be. Someone measures the foundation. Someone notices when an angle begins drifting away from its intended line. Planning hides inside repetition. You watch a cord stretched between two stakes. Its shadow falls straight across the ground. Builders align the first course against that line, checking the corners before adding height. A small error at the base becomes a serious problem above. Walls may lean, rooms may narrow, and roofs may fail to sit properly. Measurements therefore matter from the beginning. Ancient builders likely used cords, rods, body-based units, and practiced estimation. Their tools were simple, but simplicity does not mean inaccuracy. A skilled mason notices tiny deviations through sight and touch. He places one brick, adjusts another, and keeps the course level across distance. The finished wall carries that discipline silently. Modern people often associate planning with written drawings. Uruk's builders may have relied upon spoken instructions, measured ropes, marked foundations, and remembered proportions. The plan could exist in action. A master builder demonstrates the width of a doorway. Assistants repeat it across several rooms. A temple platform follows established ratios because every crew recognizes the same measuring system. The result appears coordinated even without surviving blueprints. Scholars still debate how centralized this coordination became. Some argue that major institutions controlled materials, labor, and design across large ceremonial projects. Others believe skilled households, local workshops, and neighborhood groups retained substantial independence. Standard forms may spread through imitation rather than command. Both explanations can produce repeated bricks. This uncertainty matters because uniformity does not always prove authority. People often copy methods simply because they work well. A useful mold may pass from one crew to another. A reliable wall thickness may become tradition. Builders may repeat successful designs without receiving orders from a central office. Habit can resemble bureaucracy. Still, monumental construction demands coordination beyond ordinary household needs. Vast terraces require regular deliveries of clay, reed, food, tools, and labor. Workers must arrive in organized groups. Supplies must remain available. Repairs must continue through changing seasons, and the building becomes a system before it becomes a monument. You climb the imagined slope of a rising platform. Beneath your feet lie countless bricks, many hidden forever inside the structure. Most will never be seen. Their purpose is weight, support, and endurance. They form a solid mass upon which visible architecture can rise. This hidden labor resembles the city itself. Public grandeur depends upon unseen repetition. One worker shapes clay, another carries water, another trims a brick that dried unevenly. Their separate actions vanish into a single wall. The wall outlives them all. A curious fringe claim suggests that certain brick dimensions encode astronomical ratios. Enthusiasts have compared measurements with lunar cycles and celestial numbers. The proposal remains unproven. Differences caused by erosion, rebuilding, and modern reconstruction make precise claims especially difficult. Still, ancient builders did not separate sacred thought from practical work as sharply as modern people often do. A measurement might carry a symbolic meaning while remaining useful. A temple wall could be both stable and sacred. You enter a narrow room where surviving foundations outline the former floor. The space feels smaller than expected. Mud brick walls are often thick. They support roofs, resist heat, and protect interiors from temperature changes. During the hottest hours, shaded rooms remain cooler than open courtyards. At night, stored warmth fades slowly through the clay. Architecture responds to climate through mass. The walls also shape movement. Thick boundaries create deep doorways and shadowed thresholds. Small openings reduce heat and preserve privacy. Rooms gather around courtyards where light and air can enter. Roofs provide additional working space during cooler hours. The city's geometry grows from daily survival. You notice that construction rarely begins on untouched ground. New walls rise above older walls. Damaged rooms are filled, levelled, and reused as foundations. Over generations, buildings climb slowly upward. A street may remain lower while houses beside it rise. Doorways require steps. Drainage becomes more difficult. Entire districts develop uneven surfaces shaped by repeated rebuilding. The city gains height through accumulation. This process creates artificial mounds that preserve long sequences of occupation. Archaeologists cut through them carefully, reading layers like pages compressed into earth. A burnt surface may mark sudden destruction. A clean fill may indicate deliberate rebuilding. A shifted wall may reveal changing property lines. Every layer records a decision. Some decisions are practical, others reflect status, ritual, or control. A wider doorway may allow processions. A restricted passage may limit access. A raised platform may make authority visible from a distance. Measurements turn power into space. You stand where several walls meet at a precise corner. The bricks are modest, but their arrangement feels intentional. That intention does not require a single architect commanding the entire city. It requires shared rules, trained eyes, and repeated agreement. The hidden blueprint may therefore survive in units rather than drawings. It lives in the brick mould, the measuring cord, the wall thickness, and the remembered span between supports. Small standards create large order. Evening cools the clay surfaces. Shadows lengthen across unfinished walls, revealing lines that harsh daylight can tilt. For a moment, the city appears as its builders may have seen it, not as a completed wonder, but as rows of fresh bricks waiting for another course. The plan is still becoming solid, and every measured block brings it closer to permanence. Incense smoke curls beneath a high ceiling, carrying the scent of resin, wool, and warm plaster. You step across a broad courtyard where sandals whisper against packed clay. Ahead, a raised sanctuary catches the morning light. The building does not resemble an ordinary house. Its walls are thicker, its entrances more controlled, and its position more commanding. Open spaces gather around it as though the surrounding city has learned to breathe through this single point. Here, sacred life and practical life meet. Priests move through shaded doorways carrying baskets, jars, and folded cloth. Labourers unload grain near storerooms. Scribes sit beside low tables, pressing signs into damp clay while officials watch the deliveries. The temple is not simply a place for prayer. It stores food, directs labour, receives offerings, organises festivals, and represents the presence of divine authority. In this setting, religion is not separated from administration. The sacred and the ordinary share the same walls. That arrangement gives the temple immense influence. A farmer bringing barley may believe the crop belongs partly to the divine household. A shepherd delivering wool may serve an institution associated with a goddess or god. A worker receiving food may understand the ration as both payment and participation in a sacred order. The system feels complete because every task has meaning. Archaeological excavations at Uruk revealed monumental precincts with halls, courtyards, platforms, and decorated facades. These complexes required enormous quantities of labour and material. Their scale confirms that powerful institutions could gather resources from a wide population. The buildings rise above private needs. You walk beside a wall covered with repeated recesses and projections. Sunlight catches the uneven surface, creating narrow bands of brightness and shadow. The decoration gives movement to an otherwise massive structure. Builders press coloured cones into wet plaster, forming geometric patterns across selected walls. Each cone is small, yet thousands together create shimmering fields of red, black, and pale stone. The effect must have seemed remarkable. A person accustomed to brown clay houses enters a precinct glowing with colour and ordered design. The temple appears unlike the surrounding world because it is meant to represent another level of reality. Beauty becomes a form of authority. The central sanctuary may contain a platform, an offering table, or an image associated with the deity. Access is restricted. Not every visitor enters every room. Movement follows carefully managed routes. You pass through one courtyard, then turn into a narrower passage. Another doorway reveals a larger hall. The changing scale slows your approach and controls what you can see. Architecture teaches obedience without speaking. A wide entrance welcomes a crowd while a narrow doorway admits only a few. A raised floor forces the visitor to look upward. A hidden chamber preserves mystery by limiting access. The building organizes emotion through space. Researchers from Yale University have studied how early Mesopotamian temples functioned as economic households. These institutions owned fields, managed herds, employed workers, and stored goods. The temple could act almost like a vast family, although its divine head never carried baskets or argued over missing grain. Human administrators handled such details with less celestial grace. This sacred household may include bakers, brewers, textile workers, gardeners, shepherds, and boat crews. Their labour supports ceremonies, officials, dependent, and large construction projects. The temple feeds bodies while shaping belief. You enter a storage room where tall jars stand against the walls. Barley fills baskets sealed with clay. Wool rests in bundles, waiting for cleaning and weaving. Every object carries a future purpose. Grain may become bread or beer. Wool may become garments for workers, priests, or sacred statues. Oil may burn in lamps or perfume ceremonial spaces. Storage transforms seasonal harvests into lasting powers. A household with food controls its own survival. An institution with food can influence the survival of others. During a poor harvest, stored grain becomes more valuable than silver. Those who manage the doors decide when supplies move and who receives them. The temple therefore gathers authority quietly, one jar at a time. Clay ceilings help protect storerooms and containers. A cord closes a door or jar, then wet clay covers the knot. An engraved seal rolls across the surface, leaving a recognizable design. Breaking the seal reveals interference. This small procedure creates trust among strangers. The person receiving a shipment can identify which office or official secured it. Images of animals, processions, and ritual scenes become signatures pressed into clay. A quirky possibility has fascinated some researchers. Certain seal images may represent ceremonial vessels carrying sacred goods through the city, perhaps during seasonal festivals. Others interpret the scenes as symbolic rather than literal. The tiny pictures resist certainty because they compress complicated beliefs into miniature spaces. Still, they offer glimpses of movement. You imagine a procession leaving the temple courtyard at dusk. Musicians walk near the front, followed by attendants carrying standards, vessels, and cloth. Residents gather beside the route. Children climb onto roofs for a better view. Lamps flicker along walls as the sacred image passes through familiar streets. For one evening, the city becomes a ritual map. The temple stands at the center, but its influence travels outward. Fields support its stores. Workshops produce its goods. Canals deliver its supplies. Families provide its workers. The sacred precinct is connected to places far beyond its walls. Oxford University historians have emphasized that early temples should not be imagined as modern religious buildings. Their functions were broader, combining worship, redistribution, craft production, landholding, and political representation. Yet the balance between these roles remains disputed. Some scholars argue that temple institutions dominated early urban society. Others believe powerful households, neighborhood groups, and independent merchants played larger roles than earlier theories allowed. The evidence is incomplete. Administrative tablets survive in great numbers, but they usually record goods rather than emotions. A list may name workers, grain portions, or livestock. It rarely explains how people felt about the institution controlling those resources. Did workers serve willingly? Did they consider the temple protective, demanding, generous, or distant? Perhaps they felt all of these things at different times. Human loyalty is rarely simple. You sit near a doorway where a cool draft passes through the hall. Outside, workers spread grain beneath the sun. Inside, a scribe checks quantities against a clay tablet. The contrast feels as almost theatrical. Heat and labour remain outside, shade and calculation remain within, yet both belong to the same system. A mistake in counting may affect dozens of meals, a delayed delivery may interrupt a ceremony or weaken a work crew. Administration becomes sacred because order itself appears sacred. The temple also shapes time. Festivals mark seasons, offerings follow repeated schedules. Work may be organised around agricultural cycles and religious obligations. People know when to gather because the institution remembers. Calendars are not merely lists of days, they tell a community when the world requires attention. A procession may renew the bond between city and deity. A feast may redistribute food while strengthening loyalty. A ritual may reassure residents that the natural order remains intact. Ceremony turns uncertainty into rhythm. The temple platform rises above rooftops, visible from distant fields. Its height tells farmers, travellers, and rival communities that Uruk possesses wealth, labour, and divine protection. It's both sanctuary and announcement. The building declares that thousands of people can act together. It shows that surplus exists beyond immediate hunger. It proves that someone can command time, materials, and coordinated effort. Stone would have endured more easily, but clay makes the achievement more intimate. Every wall requires renewal, every plastered surface needs care. Sacred authority must be maintained. Cracks appear after heat, rain damages exposed edges, wind drives dust into decorated recesses. Workers return with baskets, tools, and fresh plaster. The temple survives because people repeatedly choose to preserve it. That choice may come from devotion, obligation, fear, habit, or economic dependence. No single motive explains the thousands of hands involved. Perhaps the institution succeeds because it gathers all these motives together. You stand at the edge of the elevated courtyard as evening settles across Uruk. Smoke rises from household roofs. Canal water reflects the last pale light. Below Pos, the city spreads in irregular streets and crowded dwellings. Here, space feels measured, elevated, and deliberate. The temple gives the city a visible heart. Yet its deepest power lies beneath appearances. It joins storage with ceremony, labour with belief, and authority with the promise of order. A sanctuary becomes an office, a granary becomes a sacred trust, a ration becomes proof that the system still remembers you. Perhaps this is the hidden brilliance of the design. The first city does not gather around faith alone, nor around hunger alone. It gathers where both can be managed together. Night enters the courtyard slowly. The plastered walls lose their colour and the doorways become dark shapes. Somewhere within, grain waits behind a sealed door. From the highest platform, the city no longer appears as a confusion of walls. You see corridors of movement, open courts, clustered dwellings, and long edges that seem to answer one another across distance. The pattern is imperfect. That imperfection makes it convincing. A truly ancient city rarely follows one flawless design. Families rebuild, officials enlarge compounds, and workshops press against older boundaries. Yet beneath these interruptions, certain lines continue with unusual persistence. One wall faces another across a broad space. A gateway aligns with a distant entrance. Monumental buildings share directions that ordinary chance may not fully explain. You begin noticing invisible geometry. The afternoon sun makes these relationships easier to read. Shadows extend from foundations, turning shallow remains into dark bands. Features that seem disconnected begin forming larger shapes. A courtyard opens along one axis. A procession route bends toward a major precinct. Several building fronts respect the same boundary, even when their interiors differ. Space appears negotiated. Archaeological plans from Uruk show that important structures were often arranged within carefully organised sacred precincts. Researchers connected with the University of Chicago have studied how these complexes developed through repeated rebuilding. Their work confirms that major buildings did not stand alone. Platforms, halls, courts, and access routes formed connected arrangements. The question is how much of this order was planned at once. You imagine a surveyor standing on cleared ground with a measuring cord. Assistants carry wooden stakes and baskets of chalky soil. They mark corners, check distances, and correct the line before construction begins. The tools are modest, and the intention may be immense. A straight line across open ground creates more than a wall. It establishes a reference that later builders can reuse. Once one major structure defines an axis, nearby construction begins reacting to it. Entrances face it, courts open beside it, paths bend around it. The line becomes social memory. You descend toward the lower settlement, where geometry becomes harder to recognize. Houses crowd together. Passages narrow suddenly. Walls follow property edges inherited through generations. Still, certain routes remain surprisingly direct. A lane may run toward a gate. Another may connect a residential district with a landing place. A wider path may preserve room for carts, animals, or ceremonial movement. These routes do not need formal paving to shape the city. Repeated footsteps compact the soil. Drainage channels gather beside the edges. Builders place doorways where traffic is useful, then close them when privacy becomes more important. Movement leaves architecture behind. A resident understands these lines without seeing a map. She knows which passage remains shaded at midday. He knows where a crowd forms during distribution days. Children learn shortcuts between courtyards. Porters prefer routes wide enough for heavy loads. The city is measured through experience. Oxford University researchers have emphasized that early urban plans must be interpreted carefully. Excavated areas represent only fragments, while much of Uruk remains hidden beneath later layers or damaged ground. A surviving wall may belong to one phase. A nearby doorway may have opened centuries later. When archaeologists connect these remains, they risk creating a single plan from many different moments. The city resists being frozen. That caution does not erase the patterns. It makes them more intriguing. Repeated orientations appear within monumental zones. Buildings may follow cardinal directions, local topography, prevailing winds, or established sacred alignments. Each explanation carries different meaning. If builders follow the sun, architecture becomes part of celestial observation. If they follow earlier walls, tradition guides the plan. If they follow drainage, practicality rules. Perhaps all three operate together. Ancient builders do not need modern categories. A direction can be sacred because it is useful. A courtyard can face sunlight for ritual reasons and still benefit from warmth during cool mornings. Meaning and function overlap. You stand within a broad rectangular space where walls once enclosed public activity. The proportions feel calm, almost balanced. People entering from a narrow passage would experience sudden openness. Their eyes would rise toward facades, platforms, and decorated surfaces. The transition changes behavior. Voices soften, crowds spread out, officials become easier to see. Architecture directs attention. A quirky idea proposed by the fringe writers claims that Uruk's major alignments reproduce star patterns. They compare temple positions with constellations and suggest the city formed a sacred image upon the ground. The claim remains speculative. Ruined foundations, uncertain dates, and shifting celestial calculations make exact matches unreliable. Yet the idea reveals a genuine intent. People often want important places to mirror heaven. The more cautious scholarly question asks whether celestial observation influenced orientation in broad ways. Sunrise points, seasonal shadows, and prominent stars could help establish directions. Priests and builders watched the sky because timekeeping depended upon it. Agricultural and ceremonial schedules required careful attention to recurring cycles. A wall facing a particular light may therefore carry practical and symbolic value. You watch dawn enter between two reconstructed walls. Light travels slowly across the floor. touching one threshold before another. Was this deliberate? The ruins do not answer. Open debate continues among specialists concerning centralized planning. Some scholars see evidence for authorities coordinating large sectors through labor teams and measured layouts. Others argue that apparent order emerged from gradual expansion around fixed sacred centers. Each generation respected certain boundaries while improvising elsewhere. The second possibility feels almost organic. A tree grows around an obstacle without possessing a drawing. A city can do something similar, although human choices shape every branch. The result may look planned because repeated customs produce consistency. Property lines remain important. Sacred spaces remain protected. Main routes remain open because everyone depends upon them. Order can emerge without a single mastermind. Still, someone must settle disputes when one building blocks another. Someone must decide whether a wall can extend into public ground. Perhaps neighborhood elders handle small conflicts. Temple officials may control land near sacred precincts. Power appears wherever lines are ended. A boundary is never merely a mark. It separates permitted movement from forbidden movement. It protects one household while excluding another. It tells a worker where to stop building. The city's geometry is therefore social. You pass through a gateway where the walls angle inward. The narrowing slows movement and makes each visitor visible. Beyond it, the path widens again. Such transitions can regulate crowds without soldiers shouting commands. Bodies naturally compress, pause, and separate. The plan governs through shape. Modern urban designers speak of flow, access, and visibility. Uruk's builders may not use those terms, but they understand the effects. A hidden doorway protects privacy. A straight route accelerates movement. A raised platform establishes dominance. These lessons come from observation. You hear sandals scuffing across packed earth. A donkey hesitates at a tight corner, causing several irritated voices behind it. Even ancient geometry has practical enemies. The city adjusts. Corners are cut to back, doorways move, walls gain buttresses where pressure causes cracks. Every alteration adds another layer to the pattern. Researchers at Stanford University have explored how complex systems can arise through repeated local decisions. Although such models are modern, they offer a useful way to imagine early cities. A street may emerge because many people choose the easiest path. A market may form where several routes intersect. No decree is required at first. Later authorities may formalize what habit created. This is how the invisible blueprint becomes difficult to separate from daily life. The plan is partly imposed and partly inherited. It lives in official measurements, but also in countless ordinary choices. You return to the elevated view as evening softens the plain. Roofs become flat shapes beneath amber light. The city no longer seems chaotic, nor does it seem perfectly ordered. It resembles a woven fabric. Monumental axes form the strongest threads, while household lanes bend between them. Some lines are deliberate, others result from compromise. Together, they create coherence. Perhaps the hidden blueprint is not a single drawing waiting to be discovered. Perhaps it is a grammar of space. Builders know where sacred ground begins. Residents know which routes must remain open. Officials know which boundaries carry authority. Nobody sees the whole design. Everyone participates. The last sunlight stretches across courtyards and narrow passages, joining distant walls with long shadows. For a moment, the invisible lines become visible. Then darkness covers them again. Before sunrise, a line forms beside a long mud brick building near the working quarter. You hear quiet coughing, shifting sandals, and the soft knock of empty bowls. Nobody speaks loudly. The air smells of crushed barley, warm bread, and smoke from nearby ovens. Labourers wait beneath a fading sky while clerks prepare the daily distribution. Each person expects a measured portion. Grain arrives in baskets, beer in sealed jars, and oil in smaller vessels. The amounts differ according to occupation, status, age, and responsibilities. This is nourishment, but it is also classification. A mason receives one quantity, a textile worker may receive another, a supervisor carries away more than the young labourer standing near the end. The system notices difference. You watch an official level grain inside a measuring container. His hand moves across the rim, removing the excess with practiced precision. Nothing is wasted if it can be counted. Administrative tablets from early Mesopotamia confirm that institutions recorded barley, beer, oil, wool, and labour in careful quantities. Scholars associated with the University of Chicago have shown how these records reveal organised systems of work and distribution. The tablets rarely describe hunger, they describe numbers. A list may preserve the amount assigned to a group of workers. Another, record supply is issued for several days. The human body appears as an administrative requirement. It needs grain to continue digging, lifting, weaving, baking, or carrying. Officials therefore calculate food not only as sustenance, but as fuel for organised labour. That thought feels colder than the morning air. Yet the arrangement may also offer security. A worker attached to a large institution receives food even when personal fields fail. The city gathers harvests from broad territories, then redistributes portions through controlled channels. Dependence becomes protection, at least while the storerooms remain full. You can feel the bargain. The institution feeds you. You give it time, strength, and obedience. This relationship does not require chains or constant threats. It works through expectation, routine, and the knowledge that tomorrow's meal depends upon today's presence. A missed assignment may become a missing ration. The line moves forward. One person presents a token or answers to a name. Another receives bread, grain, or a jar of beer. Beer is not an indulgence reserved for celebration. It is a daily source of calories, hydration, and nutrition. The drink is thick, cloudy, and probably filled with floating grain. Modern visitors might call it rustic, which is a polite way of saying that a spoon would not seem completely unreasonable. Workers consume it through tubes that help avoid husks and residue. Images on seals show people drinking together from large vessels. A quirky interpretation suggests these scenes represent formal drinking rituals that strengthened loyalty among work groups. The idea remains possible. Though ordinary thirst may explain part of the enthusiasm, shared drink creates shared rhythm. People eat together, rest together, and return to labour together. The ration does more than fill the stomach. It organises the day. A horn, shout, or bell may signal the beginning of work. Crews gather near construction sites, workshops, fields, or canal banks. Supervisors divide tasks and record attendance. Skilled workers handle specialised duties, while larger groups perform repetitive labour. Time becomes institutional property. You no longer work only when your household chooses. You work when the group assembles. The city teaches thousands of people to move according to schedules beyond family life. This coordination makes enormous projects possible. Walls rise because meals, shifts, and materials arrive in sequence. Oxford University historians have examined how ration records expose social ranking. Larger portions often accompany higher positions, specialised skills, or administrative responsibilities. Food therefore becomes a visible measure of value. You notice who carries the heavier basket home. Everyone else notices too. A ration can reward loyalty, acknowledge skill, or reinforce hierarchy. It tells workers where they stand without requiring a public speech. The message is edible. Such systems may extend beyond permanent labourers. Seasonal workers arrive during periods of construction, harvest, or canal maintenance. They leave their households temporarily and join crews assembled from different neighbourhoods or the settlements. Food distribution allows authorities to support them while they work away from homes. Strangers become a workforce through shared portions. You enter a baking area where heat presses against your face. Women shape dough beside large clay ovens. Others grind grain on heavy stones, moving their arms in steady repetitions. Flour dust settles on hair, skin, and woven clothing. The labour behind each ration is stencil. Barley must be planted, irrigated, harvested, threshed, transported, stored, measured, ground, baked, and distributed. Every loaf contains an entire chain of human effort. The person receiving it sees only the final form. That hidden chain gives administrators unusual power. Whoever controls storage can influence every stage of the process. Access to food becomes access to labour. Scholars continue debating whether this system reflects harsh control and mutual obligation, or something between those extremes. Some emphasise inequality and institutional dominance. Others argue that large households provided stability, identity, and protection in a difficult environment. The tablets cannot settle the question. A rationalist proves that food moved. It does not reveal whether the recipient felt grateful, trapped, proud, or exhausted. Perhaps feelings changed with the harvest. In generous years, institutional service may seem secure. During shortages, the same system may become severe. Officials can reduce portions, delay payments, or favour essential workers. Small differences become frightening when households possess little reserve. Hunger sharpens every hierarchy. You see a mother dividing a loaf among several children. Her portion must stretch through the evening. Nearby, a higher official enters a courtyard carrying fine oil and better grain. His household will eat differently. The city contains abundance and scarcity side by side. That contrast is not accidental. Surplus allows specialization because not everyone must farm. Scribes, builders, merchants, priests, and craftspeople survive through food produced by others. Urban achievement depends upon unequal access to stored resources. The same system that supports art, architecture, and writing can also preserve privilege. A granary therefore holds more than barley. It holds possible futures. With enough stored grain, authorities can employ labourers during seasons when fields need less attention. They can expand canals, repair walls, prepare festivals, and produce goods for trade. Stored food turns time into something that can be redirected. That may be one of the deepest secrets within the first city. The countryside produces calories. The city converts them into organisation. You stand inside a large storage room where the temperature feels cooler. Thick walls protect the grain from heat, though insects and rodents remain persistent visitors. Cats may linger nearby, appreciated for reasons requiring no religious explanation. Clay jars are sealed, baskets are stacked, and quantities are checked repeatedly. Spoilage threatens the entire system. Moisture invites mold, broken seals invite theft, careless handling invites loss. Administration begins with suspicion. Officials inspect, compare, and record. Their caution may seem tedious, but a missing basket affects real meals. The city cannot survive through trust alone. It develops pression. A delivery receives a mark, a worker receives a portion, a clerk records the transfer. Each step reduces uncertainty while increasing oversight. You begin to sense the hidden structure surrounding ordinary hunger. Food moves among the routes defined by authority. Farmers surrender part of the harvest. Storehouses gather it. Clerks count it. Workers receive it under specific conditions. The system creates connection without equality. Even generosity can become a form of control when only one doorway holds the grain. The afternoon distribution ends. Empty containers return to the shelves, and workers scatter toward homes and workshops. Dust rises around their feet. The building grows quiet, but its influence continues through every meal prepared across the city. A child eats because a parent completed a work assignment. A wall rises because grain reached a crew. A clerk gains status because he can turn food into numbers. The blueprint of the city is not drawn only in streets, temples, or walls. It is also drawn through appetite. Every ration links the body to the system. Every measured bowl whispers the same calm instruction. Return tomorrow. A small clay object rests in your palm. Warm from the afternoon sun, it is no larger than a fingernail, yet someone shaped it carefully, dried it, and carried it across a busy settlement. Its form is simple. One token resembles a cone, another is round like a tiny ball. A third takes the shape of a flat disc, while several bare lines pressed into their surfaces. They look almost playful. Yet these objects may belong to one of humanity's earliest systems for organising thought outside the mind. You sit beside a low table where baskets of grain, jars of oil, and bundles of wool await inspection. A keeper reaches into a small container and removes several tokens. He does not write a sentence. He arranges shapes. One cone may stand for a measure of grain, a sphere may represent another quantity or commodity, a flat token might refer to livestock, oil, or labour. The exact meanings vary across time and place, but the principle remains remarkable. A physical object represents something absent. The token is not the grain, it remembers the grain. Archaeologists have recovered counting tokens from sites across the ancient Near East, some dating thousands of years before the first recognisable writing. Researchers at Harvard University and Yale University have examined how such objects may have supported exchange of storage and household accounting. Their survival confirms that people were tracking goods long before scribes filled tablets with signs. You imagine a herder delivering animals to an institution. An official places one token aside for each animal, or perhaps one token for a standard group. The objects remain together until the animals return, move elsewhere, or enter a new account. Memory becomes portable. A spoken promise can disappear through confusion, dishonesty, or simple fatigue. Tokens create something harder to dispute. 3 pieces remain 3 pieces, even when 2 people remember the agreement differently. This does not end arguments. Of course, human beings are wonderfully inventive when avoiding an obligation. Still, the objects narrow uncertainty. You hear them clicking inside a small clay bowl. The sound is soft and dry, like pebbles carried by water long ago. A keeper sorts them by shape. His fingers move quickly because he has handled the same forms for years. To an outsider, the tokens seem meaningless. To trained eyes, they form a compact language of quantity and category. The system depends upon shared understanding. A cone must mean the same thing to the person giving it and the person receiving it. The value cannot change according to mood. That consistency turns a private reminder into administration. You follow the shipment of barley toward a storeroom. Workers pour grain into baskets while an overseer counts standardized measures. Nearby, an assistant collects corresponding tokens. Each object represents one step in the transfer. The grain is bulky, dusty, and easily spilled. The token is clean, small, and controls. This difference gives the object power. A warehouse may contain thousands of measures, but a clerk can summarize them with a handful of clay pieces. Complex possessions shrink into manageable symbols. The city begins carrying its resources in miniature. Researchers associated with the University of Chicago have studied sealed clay containers known as envelopes. These hollow objects sometimes held tokens inside, protecting a record from alteration. The keeper places the tokens within wet clay, then closes the surface and presses a seal across it. The count is hidden but preserved. To inspect the contents, someone must break the container. The damage reveals that the record has been opened. Secrecy and verification enter the same small object. You hold one of these clay envelopes in your imagination. Its surface carries impressions from engraved seals, perhaps showing animals, processions, or pattern designs. Inside, tokens shift faintly when the object moves. It is an account you can hear but cannot see. The design feels almost ceremonial. A plain record becomes wrapped, sealed, and guarded against interference. Trust receives architecture. A quirky theory proposes that some token shapes carried magical qualities beyond counting. Certain enthusiasts suggest the objects served as charms, gaming pieces, or ritual models of cosmic order. A few may indeed have held several meanings, since ancient objects rarely obey modern categories. Yet most scholars treat their accounting role as the strongest explanation for repeated forms found near storage and administrative areas. The debate remains open in certain cases. Not every token has been recovered in a clear setting. Some appear in household spaces, graves, or disturbed layers. Were they all records? Could children have played with discarded pieces? Did merchants, temples, and families use similar shapes differently? The soil preserves objects more easily than intentions. You watch a household head place several tokens beside a basket of dates. She may use them to track exchanges with neighbours. A large institution might use the same principle across fields, workshops, and herds. This flexibility helps the system spread. No reader needs formal schooling in signs. A person only needs to recognise forms and their agreed values. The method is practical enough for daily life, yet expandable enough for larger organisations. More people create more transaction. More transactions create more chances for error. Tokens answer that problem without requiring a written language. A merchant can separate goods into categories. A supervisor can track portions assigned to workers. A household can remember debts across seasons. The objects stand between speech and writing. They are more durable than memory, but less expressive than a sentence. You cannot easily record sorrow with a cone. You cannot preserve a prayer using 3 spheres and a disc. The system excels at counting because counting is what the growing city urgently needs. Goods move through many hands. Ownership shifts. Obligations accumulate. People require ways to know who delivered what, who received it, and what remains due. The token gives shape to absence. A flock grazing beyond the horizon can still exist within an account. Grain stored in another district can still be represented on a table. The mind no longer carries the entire burden. That change seems small, but it alters human thought. Once a symbol stands for something unseen, people can rearrange the symbol without moving the original object. They can compare quantities, divide shares, and plan distributions. They can model reality. Perhaps this is the hidden invention. The token does not merely record the world, it allows officials to manipulate an abstract version of the world. A pile of grain becomes a count, a group of animals becomes a sequence, labour becomes a measurable obligation. Human life begins entering categories. Oxford University scholars have noted that systems of representation often develop gradually, rather than appearing through one sudden discovery. A token may begin as a simple reminder. Over generations, its shape becomes standardized, its meaning becomes formal, and its use becomes institutional. Complexity grows from repeated convenience. You see this growth in the clay envelopes. Some bear token impressions on their outer surfaces, perhaps allowing the contents to be understood without breaking the seal. A cone inside leaves a cone-shaped mark outside. The surface begins copying the object. The record slowly moves from 3 dimensions into 2. This transition remains one of the most important scholarly debates in early administrative history. Some researchers see token impressions as a direct bridge toward written signs. Others warn that several systems may have developed together, with no single straight path from object to script. The evidence suggests connection, but not simplicity. Innovation rarely follows a neat structure case. Different communities experiment. Useful methods spread, combine, and change. One technique disappears while another becomes permanent. The final result can look obvious only because unsuccessful experiments have vanished. You return the token to the table. Around you, jars are sealed, baskets are moved, and obligations continue multiplying. Nobody present believes he is inventing a new way of thinking. He is solving an ordinary problem. How much grain arrived? How many animals remain? Who owes what? The questions are practical, almost dull. Yet civilization often hides inside dull questions. A city cannot depend entirely upon spoken memory when thousands of people exchange goods through unfamiliar hands. It needs symbols that endure beyond conversation. The clay token becomes a quiet agreement between strangers. This shape means grain. This number means enough. This seal means the count remains untouched. Evening settles over the storeroom. The keeper gathers the tokens into a container and places it within a locked room. The goods remain elsewhere, heavy and perishable. Their symbols rest together in darkness. Small pieces of clay now hold an invisible version of the city, reduced to quantities that can be counted, checked, and controlled. Human thought has taken one careful step outside the human mind. A fresh clay tablet lies beneath your hand, cool, soft, and perfectly blank. Its surface waits without judgment while a scribe lifts a sharpened reed. The first mark enters with gentle pressure. A wedge appears. Then another. The signs do not merely preserve quantities now. They identify grain, labour, animals, fields, workshops, and the people responsible for them. Clay has become more than a container for memory. It has become an instrument of authority. You sit within a small administrative room where sunlight enters through a high opening. Reed baskets rest against one wall. Shelves hold tablets arranged by size, purpose, and perhaps by the official who commissioned them. The air carries the smell of damp clay and warm dust. A clerk calls out a delivery. The scribe listens and selects a sign and presses it into the tablet. Another official checks the amount, then places a seal across the lower edge. The transaction now possesses a durable form. Spoken words belong to the moment. A tablet survives the speaker, the listener, and the disagreement that may follow. The record can be carried into another room. It can be stored for months. It can be compared with a second account created by someone else. Writing creates distance between action and judgment. Researchers associated with Yale University have shown that the earliest tablets from Uruk were largely administrative. They record grain, livestock, textiles, labour assignments, and institutional goods rather than heroic stories. The oldest writing speaks in lists. This may feel disappointing if you expect poetry, prophecy, or royal secrets. Humanity learns to write, and one of its earliest concerns is apparently warehouse management. Still, the humble list changes everything. A symbol for barley allows barley to exist within an account. A sign for sheep allows a flock to be divided, transferred, or promised through marks alone. Numbers stand beside categories. Names or titles begin identifying responsible people. Reality enters a controlled surface. You watch the scribe rotate the tablet in his hands. Some early documents arrange signs in boxes or compartments, separating one entry from another. The layout guides the reader through quantities and objects. Space itself helps communicate meaning. A mark placed in one area may carry a different function from the same mark placed elsewhere. Writing is already becoming architecture. The tablet has boundaries, divisions, and paths for the eye. Its structure resembles the ordered rooms surrounding you. Nothing's placed casually. A supervisor may request 10 workers for a building task. A scribe records the assignment beside a sign identifying the destination. Those marks now direct breeze. A labourer may never see the tablet containing his obligation. He only hears the order delivered by an official. Yet the clay supports that command. The document tells administrators how many people should appear, what they should receive, and how long the task may continue. Writing quietly expands the reach of authority. A human voice fades beyond a courtyard. A written instruction travels across districts and remains unchanged in storage. The city can now issue decisions without gathering everyone together. This ability transforms administration from a chain of memories into a network of records. Oxford University scholars studying early scripts have emphasized that the signs did not begin as a complete representation of spoken language. Many early tablets relied upon symbols, numerical systems, and context understood by trained specialists. The reader needed institutional knowledge. A picture of a vessel might indicate oil, beer, or a measured capacity, depending upon accompanying signs. A mark resembling an animal might represent the creature, a product, or a category within an account. The system is powerful, but not yet simple. You imagine a young apprentice entering the room. He begins by learning how to prepare clay. Too wet and the surface collapses, too dry and the reed tears it. He practices straight impressions, angled wedges, circles, and numerical signs. His early tablets look clumsy, which is comforting evidence that bureaucracy has always required someone to make embarrassing mistakes during training. The apprentice copies established forms repeatedly. His hand learns pressure, angle, spacing, and order. He memorizes signs while listening to experienced scribes explain their proper use. Education becomes specialized. Most inhabitants do not need to read aloud. They need the system to recognize them, assign them, or record what they deliver. This creates a new social boundary. The scribe handles symbols that others cannot easily interpret. His knowledge grants access to storerooms, officials, and decisions. He may hold no weapon. He still possesses power. A tablet can prove that a worker received grain. It can show that an official accepted livestock. It can preserve a debt that the debtor would prefer to forget. The written record becomes a second witness. This witness does not breathe, but it can accuse. A curious fringe claim suggests that some early signs hide coded astronomical messages or secret teachings preserved by priestly schools. Enthusiasts search numerical tablets for sacred patterns and celestial cycles. A few signs may certainly carry religious associations. However, most surviving early accounts remain stubbornly practical. The clay prefers sheep, barley, jars, and labour. Even so, practical records can reveal hidden systems more clearly than grand myths. A list exposes what an institution values. It shows which goods receive attention, which workers become categories, and which movements require control. The absence of a record can matter too. Items ignored by administrators may belong to private households, informal exchange, or activities considered unworthy of institutional concern. Writing does not capture the whole city. It captures the part someone wishes to manage. Scholars continue debating whether writing arose mainly from economic pressure, political control, temple administration, or several needs developing together. One interpretation sees growing complexity overwhelming older methods of memory and counting. Another emphasizes the desire of institutions to make obligations visible and enforceable. Both explanations may describe the same transformation. Complexity creates records. Records create stronger institutions. The relationship feeds itself. You enter a larger room where tablets dry on reed mats. Some will remain only temporarily. Once an account is settled, the clay may be soaked and reused. Other tablets are dried more carefully or preserved through accidental fire. The ancient archive is therefore incomplete by design. Many records vanish because nobody expected distant generations to care about routine deliveries. History survives through inconvenience, disaster, and chance. A fire that destroys a building may harden its tablets like pottery. The walls collapse, but the accounts endure. Centuries later, excavators discover the records because catastrophe protected them. There is a quiet irony in that. The writing intended for short administrative life becomes one of the longest surviving human voices. You lift a finished tablet, it fits easily into one hand. Across its surface, signs identify goods, people, and measured obligations. The marks appear modest, yet they connect distant fields with central offices. A farmer harvests barley beyond the city. A porter moves it by boat. A keeper receives it. A scribe records it. An official assigns it. Writing joins these separate actions into one institutional reality. The tablet acts like a small model of the city. Every sign has a place. Every quantity belongs to a category. Every person enters through a role. Messy human life becomes orderly clay. Of course, life does not always obey. A worker falls ill. A shipment arrives damaged. An animal disappears. A supervisor exaggerates the amount delivered. The record may contain errors, manipulation, or wishful accounting. Writing does not eliminate dishonesty. It gives dishonesty a more durable surface. Officials compare tablets, seals, and totals because records can conflict. One account says 20 jars arrived. Another shows only 18 entered storage. Somewhere between those numbers, responsibility waits. The search for accuracy encourages additional records. More tablets create more checking, and more checking creates additional specialists. Administration thickens around herself. You hear the steady tapping of reeds against clay. The sound is delicate, almost soothing. Each impression seems harmless. Together, the marks decide who works, what moves, and how much remains. Language has entered the machinery of the city. The scribe sets the tablet aside, and its surface begins drying in the warm room. Soon the marks cannot be smoothed away without visible damage. A temporary decision becomes fixed. That may be the deepest change of all. The city can now remember more than any living person. It can preserve instructions beyond a single conversation and obligations beyond a single season. Memory no longer belongs only to human minds. It rests upon shelves. And from those shelves, silent symbols begin giving commands. The city wakes through many hands. You hear grinding stones turning in courtyards, hammers striking copper, and sandals brushing across packed earth. Smoke rises from ovens while boats approach crowded landing places. Every sound belongs to someone whose labour keeps Uruk alive. From a distance, the city may seem like the creation of rulers and priests. At ground level, its design depends upon thousands of people performing different tasks with practiced care. Each person occupies a place within the pattern. A farmer stands beyond the crowded neighbourhoods, examining barley heads beneath the morning light. His field lies within a landscape divided by channels, boundaries, and obligations. Part of his harvest feeds his household, another portion may pass into institutional storage, satisfy a debt, or support workers far from the fields. He rarely sees the buildings his grain makes possible, yet every raised platform begins with food. Without agricultural surplus, builders cannot leave the fields for long. Scribes cannot spend their days shaping signs. Metal workers cannot devote years to difficult crafts. The farmer supports professions that transform the city, although his own position may remain modest. Researchers from the University of Chicago have shown that early urban settlements depended upon extensive rural territories. Uruk was never an isolated island of walls and temples. Its population drew sustenance from villages, fields, orchards, marshes, and herding lands spread across the plain. The city reaches outward through appetite. Within the walls, a builder studies a damaged corner where fresh cracks cross the plaster. He presses his palm against the surface and feels where the clay has weakened. His knowledge comes through experience. He understands which mixtures dry evenly, which foundations settle poorly, and which roofs require additional support. No written manual guides every decision. The builder carries the plan inside his habits. An apprentice follows closely, gathering broken material and watching how repairs are made. Skills pass through observation, correction, and repetition. A careless movement earns a sharp remark. A successful course of bricks earns only silence, which may be the oldest form of professional approval. Nearby, carpenters shape imported timber into doors, roof beams, and fittings. Wood is valuable because suitable trees remain scarce across the southern plain. Every offcut matters. Copper workers heat metal in small furnaces, feeding the fire until the interior glows. The air tastes bitter with smoke and mineral dust. Stoneworkers handle materials brought from distant regions. They produce seals, vessels, tools, and ornaments for people who can afford them. Craft becomes a mark of difference. Some workers produce ordinary objects quickly. Others spend weeks upon items intended for wealthy households or sacred use. A finely carved seal can identify an official's secure property and display social standing. It is both tool and announcement. Harvard University scholars studying early craft specialization have emphasized that urban growth allowed skilled workers to concentrate upon narrow professions. Such specialization increased quality, but it also deepened dependence. A potter needs grain from farmers. A farmer needs tools from craftspeople. Neither household remains completely self-sufficient. Exchange binds strangers through necessity. You enter a textile workshop where wool hangs from wooden frames. Women clean forers, spin thread, prepare dyes, and weave cloth in steady groups. Textile production demands patience. A garment begins long before the loom, with herding, shearing, washing, sorting, sport, and spinning. The finished cloth may travel farther than its maker ever does. Administrative records confirm that textile labour formed a major part of Mesopotamian institutional economies. Large groups of women and dependents appear within accounts connected to wool and cloth production. The documents reveal quantities and assignments, but rarely preserve individual voices. You imagine their conversations filling the room. They exchange family news, complain about poor wool, tease an inattentive apprentice, and calculate how much work remains before dusk. Official records reduce them to category. Daily life restores their humanity. Not far away, merchants prepare goods for travel. They inspect jars, check seals, and bargain with boat owners. A merchant lives between worlds. He understands the needs of Uruk, but he also knows distant routes, foreign materials, uncertain languages, and dangerous delays. His success depends upon memory, confidence, and relationships maintained across long distances. He may carry wool outward and return with timber, stone, or metal. The city values his cargo while remaining suspicious of his freedom. Merchants can gather private wealth beyond direct institutional control. They move through networks that officials may regulate without fully owning. Scholars continue debating how independent early merchants truly were. Some interpret them as agents serving temples or powerful households. Others believe the private enterprise played a larger role, especially as trade networks expanded. The surviving tablets favour institutions because institutions produced archive. Private conversation leaves fewer traces. This imbalance makes ordinary independence difficult to measure. You pass a household where a woman supervises servants, children stored goods, and food preparation. Her authority may not appear within monumental inscriptions, yet the household depends upon her decisions. She allocates grain, arranges work, watches property, and maintains family alliances. Urban society is built within homes as surely as within public compounds. Marriage joins households and transfers rights, obligations, and possessions. Adoption can preserve inheritance lines. Family elders settle disputes that never reach formal authorities. The city contains many small governments. A priest crosses an open court carrying a vessel wrapped in cloth. His role connects ceremony with institutional order. He interprets ritual expectations, supervises offerings, and maintains traditions that reassure the community. His authority depends partly upon knowledge unavailable to others. He knows the proper sequence of actions. He knows which words belong to which occasion, yet priests are not always a single united class. Different sanctuaries, offices, and families may compete for influence. Sacred service contains ambition like any human institution. A fringe tale repeated in later traditions claims that certain priests guarded secret plans received directly from divine beings. These plans supposedly reveal the perfect arrangement of cities and temples. There is no firm evidence for a hidden master drawing of that kind. Still, the tale reflects a believable social truth. Specialized knowledge often appears mysterious to those excluded from it. A surveyor stretching cords across cleared ground can seem almost magical when his measurements produce a straight wall. A scribe reading marks can appear to hear clay speaking. Knowledge creates distance. Officials move between these groups, gathering reports and issuing instructions. They may supervise labor, inspect stores, settle disputes, or represent powerful institutions. Their work depends upon information. An official who receives false totals may make disastrous decisions. One who controls accurate records can influence food, labor, and construction. Power settles inside administration. At the lowest edge of the hierarchy, laborers carry loads beneath the sun. Some work seasonally. Others may be dependents attached to institutions or households. They dig foundations, clear channels, transport clay, unload boats, and raise walls whose finished surfaces conceal their effort. Their bodies absorb the city's weight. The exact freedom of these workers remains an open scholarly question. Some labour may represent communal obligation, similar to a required public duties. Other workers may receive regular support from institutions, captives, debt dependents, and enslaved people also existed within early Mesopotamian society. The categories overlap imperfectly. A person may experience service as protection during one season and coercion during another. The evidence refuses simple labels. You stand near a crowded crossing where these lives briefly meet. A farmer guides a donkey loaded with produce. A scribe steps aside to protect his tablet. A merchant argues over damaged jars. A worker laughs while carrying a basket of clay. Nobody sees the entire system. Each person understands only the part touching daily life. The farmer sees demands upon grain. The builder sees walls requiring repair. The priest sees rituals requiring precision. The merchant sees roots. The labourer sees weight. Together, they create a city none could create alone. This may be the most hidden part of the blueprint. Social roles function like rooms within a vast structure. Some are spacious and protected, others remain narrow, exposed, and difficult to leave. People move through these roles according to birth, skill, wealth, obligation, and chance. The city offers possibilities unavailable in smaller settlements. A talented apprentice may become a respected specialist. A successful merchant may gather influence. A household may rise through service and alliance. Yet the same complexity can trap people inside inherited duties. Opportunity and confinement share the same streets. Evening settles across the working quarters. Fires dim, tools grow quiet, and families gather around simple meals. The monumental buildings remain visible above the roofs, but their true foundations are human. They rest upon farmers who produce, workers who carry, artisans who shape, merchants who connect, priests who interpret, and officials who count. The first city is not one invention. It is an agreement among unequal strangers, and every morning that agreement must begin again. A wall rises across the plain like a low horizon made by human hands. You approach it beneath a colourless sky, where wind pushes dust against the outer face. The structure appears defensive. Its deeper purpose is less obvious. Mud brick towers stand at intervals, overlooking paths that converge near guarded entrances. Travellers slow as they approach. Animals gather beneath the sun, while officials inspect loads and question unfamiliar faces. The city begins at this boundary. Outside, fields, marshes, herding grounds, and scattered settlements spread toward the distance. Inside, streets tighten around houses, workshops, courtyards, and institutions. Crossing the gate means entering another kind of order. Archaeological evidence confirms that Uruk possessed an enormous circuit of fortifications during its mature period. The wall extended for several miles and enclosed a settlement remarkable in size. Researchers associated with Cambridge University have studied how early fortifications combined military strength with political symbolism. A wall could protect inhabitants, but it also displayed the ability to command labour. Thousands of workers must gather clay, shape bricks, transport materials, and maintain the finished circuit. The wall is therefore a public statement. It says that the city can organise effort beyond any household. It announces that those living inside belong to a community capable of defending itself. Belonging becomes visible. You place your hand against the outer surface. The plaster feels warm and rough beneath your fingers. Above, a guard watches a movement across the plain. Perhaps he fears raiders. Perhaps he mostly watches goats. Most days along an ancient wall are probably less dramatic than later legends suggest. Guards inspect merchants, direct carts, and complain about heat. Still, the possibility of violence shapes everything. Rival settlements compete for land, water, labour, and trade. Herding groups move along uncertain frontiers. A failed harvest may push desperate people toward richer districts. The wall creates time during danger. Attackers must climb, break, burn, or find a weak entrance. Defenders gain height. visibility, and a place to gather. Even an imperfect barrier changes the balance, yet scholars debate how frequently early city walls faced organised warfare. Some researchers emphasise conflict among growing centres. Others argue that flood control and civic display and regulation mattered equally. The surviving structure cannot reveal every threat. A wall may protect against enemies one year and rising water the next. Thick embankments redirect runoff, stabilise edges, and reduce erosion near vulnerable districts. Practical uses overlap naturally. The city does not build separate monuments for every fear. You walk toward a gate where the road narrows between projecting towers. The passage forces carts into single order. Merchants wait while officials inspect jars, textiles, animals, and baskets. Goods entering the city become easier to count at a controlled opening. The gate behaves like a filter. It allows movement, but only through selected points. Taxes, duties, or institutional claims may be collected here. Traders can be questioned about origin, destination, and cargo. A gatekeeper possesses unusual influence. He decides who enters quickly and who remains beneath the sun. Such power invites gifts, favours, and occasional corruption. Human nature rarely waits for formal bureaucracy before discovering a convenient side payment. The gateway also protects health and order. Diseased animals may be refused. Dangerous goods can be delayed. Large groups can be separated before entering crowded streets. Access becomes administration. Oxford University historians have noted that ancient gates often served legal and ceremonial functions. Officials might hear disputes nearby, while witnesses gathered in a space associated with public authority. The gate connects private movement with civic judgment. A stranger arriving from a distant lands learns the city through this passage. He sees guards, walls, towers, seals, and measured control. Before reaching any temple or market, he encounters authority. That sequence matters. The wall creates an identity by separating those within from those beyond. Residents may come from their different families, occupations, and districts. The boundary gives them one shared condition. They are people of the enclosed city. This identity can become powerful during danger, festivals, or political gatherings. The wall offers a physical outline for collective imagination. Inside it, differences remain. Outside it, those differences appear smaller. You follow the inner face where houses press close to the fortification. Some residents live beneath its shadow, hearing guards pass overhead. The wall affects property, movement, light, and noise. Building too near may be restricted, although crowded neighbourhoods often ignore ideal rules. Children play beside drainage cuts. Vendors gather near busy gates. Porters wait for incoming cargo. The defensive edge becomes an economic zone. Workshops may benefit from traffic, especially those serving travellers. Animals and carts, food sellers, repairers, and lodging keepers gather near the entrances. A gate attracts life because movement concentrates there. The city wall therefore creates its own neighbourhoods. A curious fringe tradition claims that the legendary King Gilgamesh personally designed Uruk's fortifications with knowledge granted by the gods. The later epic praises the walls and invites listeners to admire their brickwork. Archaeology cannot confirm a single royal builder. Larger fortifications usually emerge through many stages, repairs, and expansions. Still, the legend preserves a political idea. A great ruler proves legitimacy by enclosing the city. Protection becomes part of kingship, even when countless unnamed workers perform the actual construction. The ruler receives memory. The labourers receive dust. You climb an imagined stairway toward the wall walk. From above, the city spreads inward, while open land stretches outward. The contrast feels sharper here. Roofs crowd together behind you. Beyond the outer face, movement appears exposed and distant. The wall changes how space feels. Inside seems known, watched, and organised. Outside seems open, uncertain, and difficult to control. This distinction is partly illusion. Danger can arise within households, workshops, institutions, and rival factions. Safety does not begin automatically at the gate. Yet boundaries influence belief even when reality remains complicated. A closed gate at night reassures residents. Its heavy doors suggest that chaos has been kept outside until morning. The sound of wooden bars dropping into place may feel deeply comforting. It may also feel imprisoning. Anyone arriving late remains beyond protection. Anyone ordered to stay inside loses freedom of movement. The same barrier serves as opposite experiences. Researchers from Stanford University studying social boundaries have shown how enclosed spaces often strengthen group identity while increasing suspicion toward outsiders. That pattern appears across many periods of human history. A boundary protects cooperation by defining membership. It can also turn difference into danger. At Uruk, visitors may require sponsors, permits, or recognizable connections. Merchants with trusted seals enter more easily than wandering strangers. Familiarity becomes a kind of passport. People without recognized ties attract attention. This does not mean every outsider is feared. Cities depend upon travelers, traders, laborers, and specialists from distant regions. The challenge is to welcome useful movement without surrendering control. The gate must remain open enough for prosperity. It must remain guarded enough for order. That tension shapes the city every day. You hear the creak of wooden doors near sunset. Guards prepare to close the entrance while the final carts hurry inward. Dust hangs in the passage. Animals resist the narrowing space, creating a chorus of stubborn complaints. Officials finish their counts. Outside, several travellers settle near the wall, unable to enter before darkness. They light small fires and wait beneath the towers. Inside, streets grow quieter. The boundary now changes time as well as space. Day permits exchange, night restricts it. A city enclosed by walls can regulate when movement begins, when trade ends, and when strangers become visible. The wall is therefore more than defence. It is a schedule, a border, a checkpoint, a symbol, and a promise. Its bricks carry the weight of fear, pride, commerce, law, and belonging. You remain near the closed gate as darkness settles across the plain. The wall disappears into the shadows, though its presence feels stronger than ever. Beyond it lies uncertainty. Within it lies another uncertainty carefully organised. The first city defines itself by drawing a line through the landscape, and every line creates two worlds. Water enters the city in narrow channels, carrying reflections of roofs, walls, boats, and passing clouds. You stand beside one of these canals as morning light trembles across its surface. The current moves slowly. Its work never... Small vessels glide between landing places, guided by poles pressing into the muddy bottom. Reed baskets crowd the decks. Jars knock gently together beneath woven covers. The canal carries food, fuel, tools, clay, wool, and people. It also carries messages, rumours, instructions, and the quiet pulse of urban life. A street connects feet. A canal connects everything heavier. You follow the water through a district where buildings stand close to the banks. Stone is rare, so steps descend through packed clay towards simple moorings. Workers bend beneath loads as boats arrive. One crew unloads grain, another lifts bundles of reeds needed for roofs, mats, baskets, and walls. Every cargo seems ordinary. Together, they keep the city alive. Researchers associated with the University of Pennsylvania have shown that southern Mesopotamian cities depended upon dense networks of canals. These waterways supported agriculture, transport, drainage, and communication across the plain. The flat landscape made boats especially useful. A vessel can move more weight than a person or animal carrying goods over rough ground. Water reduces effort, though it creates new problems whenever channels silt, narrow, or change course. Urban movement becomes easier and more fragile at once. You hear a pole scrape against the canal bed. The boatman leans forward, pushes hard, and guides the vessel around a bend. His skill appears casual. It is not. He judges depth, current, wind, and hidden obstructions without stopping. A poor turn can crush jars against the bank or block traffic in a narrow passage. Other boatmen shout advice, criticism, and opinions nobody requested. The canal is a public road with no painted lanes. Traffic follows custom. Smaller boats keep near the edge while larger cargo vessels claim deeper water. Landing places develop where banks remain firm and access to storage proves convenient. A busy quay becomes a knot within the city. Porters gather there before dawn. Merchants inspect seals. Officials count arrivals. Food sellers appear because waiting workers always become hungry. The water draws commerce toward itself. Workshops also gather near useful channels. Potters need clay and water. Textile workers wash wool and dyed cloth. Brewers require steady supplies. Builders receive mud, reeds, and timber directly from boats. The canal shortens distance between raw material and finished object. A jar begins as clay lifted near water. It dries in a workshop beside water. It travels by boat towards a household that may store oil brought through another channel. The object never leaves the aquatic system. You pass a place where women rinse woven cloth along the bank. Their hands move through brown water while children balance dangerously near the edge. The canal serves the household as much as the merchant. Water fills jars, cleans tools, cools courtyards, and carries small refuse airway. Fishers lower traps near a quieter section. Ducks gather wherever food scraps collect. This usefulness encourages intimacy. Homes open toward the water, and daily routines follow its rhythm. Yet the canal is never entirely clean. Workshops discharge residue. Animals enter near shallow banks. Waste gathers where the current slows. The same channel that supplies life can spread sickness, smell, and contamination. Urban convenience has a show. Oxford University scholars have emphasized that ancient water management required constant communal maintenance. Canals filled with silt because rivers carried enormous quantities of sediment. Workers had to clear channels repeatedly. The task was exhausting but unavoidable. You imagine crews entering the water with baskets and wooden tools. Mud clings to their legs while supervisors mark sections needing attention. The removed silt is piled along the banks, where it can strengthen embankments or spread across fields. Nothing useful is ignored. A blocked canal threatens more than transport. It can reduce irrigation, trap waste, and cut neighbourhoods away from supplies. The city therefore watches its waterways with anxious care. A narrow channel may serve one district. A larger branch may connect markets, storehouses, and agricultural zones beyond the walls. Some canals function like local lanes. Others resemble grand avenues carrying the wealth of distant regions. The network creates hierarchy in water. Property near a major channel may become valuable. A household with direct access can receive goods more easily. A workshop beside a minor ditch waits longer for deliveries and struggles during dry periods. Location shapes opportunity. This creates disputes. One family extends a platform too far into the water. A merchant leaves a vessel moored where others need passage. A landowner redirects flow toward private fields. Neighbours protest when their section becomes shallow. Water makes selfishness visible. Officials or local elders must decide whose access matters most. They may order obstructions removed, banks repaired, or channels widened. Such decisions reveal authority through practical necessity. You can ignore a distant decree. You cannot ignore a dry canal. Researchers from Yale University have argued that control of water may have strengthened early institutions, though scholars disagree about how centralized management became. One view sees powerful authorities organizing large labor forces and regulating major channels. Another suggests that neighborhoods and households managed smaller systems through local cooperation. Both arrangements likely existed together. A vast network does not require one office to control every drop. It requires many agreements that overlap. The canal also carries sound. Voices travel across water between buildings. Oars dip, ropes tighten, and hulls rub against wooden posts. At night, A boat moving through darkness announces itself long before it appears. Residents learn the music of traffic. A heavy cargo vessel sounds different from a fishing boat. A hurried official crew moves differently from a family crossing between districts. The water becomes a language of motion. A quirky belief may have grown around dangerous bends and drowned cargoes. Later Mesopotamian traditions speak of spirits associated with rivers, marshes, and uncertain waters. Some people may have offered small gifts before difficult journeys. Others probably relied upon curses, practical knots, and stronger boatmen. The supernatural and the sensible often travel together. You watch a merchant touch the side of his vessel before departure. Perhaps the gesture seeks luck. Perhaps he is checking for cracks and The canal leads toward a gate where water passes through the city boundary. Guards monitor vessels entering and leaving. This opening cannot be treated casually. A boat can carry valuable goods, hidden passengers, or hostile men. Barriers, chains, narrow passages, and watch stations may regulate movement. Water access becomes security. The city must remain open enough to receive supplies while protected enough to survive. A canal gate solves one problem by creating another. During flood conditions, officials may close or narrow certain channels. Embankments are strengthened. Weak areas receive extra clay and reed reinforcement. The city listens for danger in rising water. A sudden change in depth may threaten homes built near the bank. Storerooms face particular risk because damp grain can spoil quickly. Flooding turns abundance into loss. Drainage channels carry excess water away from courtyards and streets. Some follow natural slopes, while others connect with larger canals. Their maintenance is less impressive than temple construction, but equally important. A city without drainage becomes a basin of mud. Residents learn to build thresholds, raised floors, and sloping surfaces. Wastewater moves through small cuts toward broader channels. The system is perfect. It is still a system. Stanford University researchers studying urban networks have shown how transport routes influence the growth of neighborhoods. A canal can attract markets, warehouses, workshops, and residences in repeating patterns. The route becomes an organizing force. Buildings turn toward it, paths connect to it, property lines adjust around it. Water draws the city into shape. You climb onto a roof overlooking several channels. From above, they resemble dark threads stitched through clay-coloured districts. Boats move along them like beads. One carries reeds, another carries wool. A smaller vessel transports passengers seated close together beneath a woven shade. The city appears less like a cluster of buildings and more like a living network. Goods enter at one point and emerge elsewhere transformed. Grain becomes bread, wool becomes cloth, clay becomes tablets, jars and bricks. The canal connects these changes. It is not merely a route between places. It is a route between stages of human effort. Afternoon heat settles over the water. The surface darkens beneath shadows from high walls. A boat passes close enough for you to smell wet rope, fish, and bitumen. The boatman lifts his pole, plants it again, and continues without looking back. His movement seems small. The city moves with him. Every channel carries more than cargo. It carries dependence between districts, professions, households, and institutions. Remove one important water and the pattern weakens. The first city breathes through canal. Its arteries are brown, slow, crowded, and never completely obedient. A wooden door closes behind you, and the noise of the street fades almost at once. The change feels immediate. Outside, animals complain, traders bargain, and porters call across crowded lanes. Inside, only water drips into a shallow basin. The house turns away from the public world. Its outer walls present few openings, protecting the rooms from heat, dust, noise, and curious eyes. Light enters mainly through an open courtyard at the centre. You step into that courtyard and feel the air change. Sunlight falls across one side, while the opposite wall remains cool beneath shadow. A woven mat hangs near a doorway. Clay jars stand beside a plastered bench, and herbs dry from cords stretched overhead. This empty space is not truly empty. It is the heart of the household. Rooms gather around it, each connected through doors opening inward. Cooking, weaving, conversation, storage, and family rituals all pass through this central place. The courtyard provides light without exposing the household to the street. It allows air to circulate while preserving privacy. Architecture creates a protected sea. Researchers associated with the University of Chicago have studied excavated Mesopotamian houses built around central courtyards. Their work confirms that this arrangement became one of the most enduring domestic patterns in the region. The form answers several needs at once. Thick walls reduce daytime heat. Inner rooms remain shaded. Roofs provide sleeping and working areas during cooler hours. The courtyard offers controlled openness within a crowded city. You touch the plaster beside a doorway. It feels smooth where countless shoulders brushed past. The threshold is worn lower in the centre. These small traces reveal movement. One room may hold grain jars and tools. Another contains sleeping mats, chests, and folded textiles. A larger chamber receives visitors connected to the family. Not every guest enters every space. The house teaches boundaries quietly. A trader may be welcome near the entrance. A trusted relative moves deeper inside. Children pass freely between rooms, while servants or workers follow established routes. Privacy is not a single locked door. It is a sequence. The farther you move from the street, the more intimate the household becomes. Sound softens. Public obligations give way to family concerns. A courtyard house protects reputation as carefully as comfort. In a city filled with strangers, the household remains the place where identity feels most stable. Family members share meals, property, ancestors, and responsibilities. The exterior wall separates that private order from unpredictable streets. A narrow entrance may turn sharply before reaching the courtyard. This prevents people outside from seeing directly into domestic space. The design controls the gaze. You pause near the doorway and notice how little of the interior is visible from the lane. A visitor must be admitted before understanding the house. That uncertainty gives residents power. The street knows only the wall. Inside, the household contains its own hierarchy. The head of the family manages property, agreements, and relations with other households. Women may supervise food preparation, textile production, children, servants, and stored goods. Older relatives carry authority through memory and experience. Children learn social roles by watching daily work. The house is therefore a school without formal lessons. A daughter observes how grain is measured. A son learns which visitors deserve respect. A servant notices where valuable jars are kept. Every room teaches position. Archaeological records from Yale University researchers show that domestic buildings varied greatly in size. Some houses contained modest courtyards and only a few rooms. Others expanded into broad compounds with multiple courts, storage chambers, reception areas, and specialized workspaces. Space displays rank. A wealthy household can devote rooms to storage, guests, servants, and administration. A poorer family uses the same room for several purposes. One chamber may serve for sleeping at night, weaving during the day, and storage throughout the year. Furniture remains limited and movable. Mats roll away, low tables shift, baskets stack against walls. The room changes according to time. You hear grain grinding in a shaded corner. The stone moves back and forth with a steady scrape. Nearby, dough rests beneath a cloth. Smoke from a cooking hearth rises toward the open courtyard, carrying the scent of barley and onions. Domestic labour fills the air. These tasks rarely appear in royal inscriptions, yet they sustain every person who enters the street. Meals require planning, fuel, water, grain, vessels, and time. The household turns raw goods into daily survival. A small shrine may occupy a niche along one wall. Figurines, bowls, or lamps gather there during family rituals. The great temples dominate the skyline. but belief also lives in quiet rooms. Families honour protective powers, ancestors, or household deities through simple offerings. A pinch of grain, a lamp, or a spoken request may accompany birth, illness, marriage, and death. Sacred life enters domestic space though. A quirky belief preserved in later traditions concerns protective figures buried beneath floors or placed near doorways. Some were thought to guard the household against harmful forces. Archaeologists have found small figurines in ritual contexts, though their exact meanings remain uncertain. Perhaps they protected residents. Perhaps they mark ceremonies now forgotten. Either way, the floor beneath your feet may hold more than foundations. The house remembers its dead as well as its living. In some Mesopotamian communities, family burials occurred beneath domestic floors. This practice kept ancestors physically close to the household. Daily life continued above them with unsettling calm. A child might sleep only a short distance from a buried grandparent. Such closeness may seem strange, yet it binds property, memory, and lineage together. The house belongs not only to present residents, it belongs to generations. Scholars continue debating how common domestic burial practices were across different periods and social groups. Excavated examples provide evidence, but surviving houses represent only a fraction of the city. Customs may vary between districts, families, and centuries. The silence below the floor remains incomplete. You climb a narrow stairway toward the roof. The steps feel steep beneath your feet. Above, evening air moves more freely. Neighbouring roofs spread across the district at different heights. Families work, talk, and sleep here when temperatures allow. Roofs create another layer of urban life. Women spread grain to dry. Children cross between related households. People watch smoke rising from western courtyards. Privacy becomes more complicated above the walls. A rooftop offers escape from enclosed rooms, but it also exposes residents to neighbours. Screens, awnings, and social customs help define acceptable behaviour. Everyone can see more than politeness admits. A humorous fringe suggestion claims rooftop routes formed secret networks used by lovers, thieves, or political messengers. Such movement was certainly possible, although evidence for organised hidden pathways remains thin. Still, the imagination enjoys crowded roofs. One careless step could enter another family's domestic world, creating embarrassment faster than any formal invitation. Back below, you notice cracks running through an older wall. The household repairs them with fresh plaster. Domestic architecture changes constantly. A family adds a room when wealth increases. A doorway closes after inheritance divides property. A courtyard narrows when storage becomes more important. Homes preserve family history through alteration. One generation builds an alcove, another fills it. A third raises the floor after repeated flooding. The original design slowly disappears beneath practical decisions. Oxford University scholars have noted that household plans can reveal social change, but interpretation remains difficult. A larger room may indicate wealth, communal gatherings, craft production, or several uses combined. Walls show possibilities, not complete biographies. The people remain partly hidden. You sit beside the courtyard as darkness gathers overhead. Lamps appear in doorways, their flames reflected on plaster. The city continues beyond the outer wall, but it feels distant here. A family shares food beneath the open sky. Voices remain low. Someone folds cloth while another checks a sleeping child. The house shelters more than bodies. It protects secrets, tensions, loyalties, memory, and small ambitions. It creates a private world inside the larger urban system. The city depends upon this separation. Public life needs households that feed workers, raise children, store property, and preserve identity. The household needs streets, markets, water, and protection from the city. Each contains the other. You look upward through the square of night above the courtyard. Stars remain visible between high walls. The sky feels close and carefully framed. Outside, Uruk stretches through noise and movement. Inside, A single family gathers around its quiet centre. The first city may be built from crowds. Its deepest life remains hidden behind closed doors. A measuring cord lies coiled beside a foundation trench, darkened by dust and repeated handling. You lift it carefully, feeling knots placed at steady intervals along its length. The tool appears almost too simple, yet with cords, rods, weights, and practiced eyes, builders can divide land, align walls, calculate areas, and reproduce dimensions across the city. Order begins with comparison. One doorway matches another. One storehouse holds a known quantity. One field produces an expected share under favourable conditions. Measurements allow people to compare things separated by distance and time. A wall does not need to stand beside another wall for their widths to agree. A field can be divided among heirs who are not present during the survey. Numbers make absence manageable. You watch two surveyors stretch the cord across cleared ground. One holds the starting point while the other walks slowly toward a wooden stake. They pull until the line becomes straight. A third person checks the angle using another cord. The triangle they create is not described through modern formulas, yet its shape produces a dependable corner. Practical geometry enters the earth. Clay tablets from Mesopotamia confirm that scribes used sophisticated systems of numbers, measures, and calculation. Researchers at Yale University have studied how early mathematical traditions developed from administrative needs. Grain had to be counted, fields had to be measured, labour had to be divided. Mathematics grew inside ordinary problems. You sit beside a scribe who draws columns across a tablet. He records lengths using signs tied to familiar units. Different systems may apply to grain, land, weight, and time. This seems inconvenient, but every system answers a particular need. A measure suitable for barley does not need to match a measure used for silver. Consistency matters within each category. The scribe learns which number belongs to which object. He cannot simply write a quantity without context. A sign for 6 may mean different actual amounts depending upon what is being measured. Numbers are not yet free from things. They remain attached to grain baskets, field surfaces, workdays, and containers. Yet this attachment does not weaken them. It makes them useful. A builder knows how many bricks fill a certain span. A brewer knows how much grain produces a planned batch. A storekeeper knows how many vessels should remain when distribution ends. Calculation predicts the result before the work is finished. That ability feels almost... You stand near a rectangular courtyard marked only by stakes. Nothing has risen yet, but the dimensions already exist. The builder walks its edges, counting intervals. He adjusts one corner, then checks the opposite side. The empty ground contains a future room. Measurement allows architecture to exist before construction. The building first appears as distances held in memory, cord, and spoken instruction. Only later does clay make it visible. Researchers from Oxford University have examined how ancient builders used repeated modules in monumental design. Certain room widths, wall thicknesses, and courtyard proportions appear often enough to suggest shared planning habits. The evidence does not prove a universal code. It does suggest discipline. A standard unit helps crews work together even when they begin in separate places. One group prepares foundations while another shapes materials. Their efforts meet correctly because both follow the same measure. Without that agreement, large construction becomes a slow argument made from crooked walls. The city therefore depends upon invisible standards. You notice a basket used to measure grain. Its volume must remain familiar to buyers, officials, and workers. If every basket differs, exchange becomes endless suspicion. A standard container turns quantity into trust. Of course, dishonest traders can shave edges, pack grain loosely, or keep a smaller measure for giving and a larger one for receiving. Ancient commerce possesses all the creativity of later commerce. Officials may inspect weights and containers to limit such practices. Standard stones help compare valuable materials. A balance reveals differences too small for the hand to judge. The beam settles slowly. One side falls. A transaction changes. Weights are especially important when silver begins serving as a measure of value. Silver may be weighed rather than used as minted coins. Its worth depends upon agreed units and reliable balances. Metal becomes portable calculation. A merchant can compare wool, grain, oil, and imported materials through shared values. Goods unlike one another enter the same numerical conversation. The city gains another layer of abstraction. A quirky theory claims that early Mesopotamian measures came from secret proportions hidden within the human body. Enthusiasts point toward fingers, palms, feet, and forearms as sacred models. Body-based units certainly existed in many ancient societies. Their exact spiritual importance remains uncertain. A forearm is convenient because everyone carries one. Unfortunately, people do not carry identical forearms. Standard rods solve that problem. A recognized measuring object creates agreement beyond individual bodies. The ruler becomes more reliable than the ruler. You follow a land surveyor beyond crowded districts. Floodwater has disturbed field boundaries, leaving only faint ridges across the soil. Farmers gather nearby, each remembering the old divisions with impressive confidence. The surveyor must reconstruct order. He measures distances from surviving markers, canals, and paths. Witnesses describe where one holding ended and another began. His calculation affects harvests, inheritance, and status. A line drawn across soil can enrich one family and anger another for generations. Mathematics appears clear. Its use is not. Scholars continue debating how much early measurements serve central authorities and how much belong to local practice. Some argue that institutions required standard units to manage taxes, fields, and labour. Others emphasize household traditions, regional variation, and flexible negotiation. The tablets preserve official calculations most clearly. Informal counting disappears more easily. A shepherd may track animals through notches on wood. A baker may judge quantities through touch and experience, or a mother may divide food without using any written number. Mathematical life extends beyond archives. Still, formal systems allow larger groups to cooperate. A distant official can understand a field report because its units follow accepted rules. A shipment can be checked at several points. A work crew can receive assignments based upon expected output. Calculation links separated people through shared expectations. You hear a clerk reading totals aloud. His voice carries across the room while another scribe checks the talent. Mistakes are dangerous. One misplaced sign can alter rations, debt, or land allocation. Corrections must remain visible so records cannot be quietly changed. The clay remembers hesitation. A smoothed patch shows where the scribe reconsidered. A crowded sign reveals limited space. Even numbers carry human uncertainty. Stanford University researchers studying complex societies have shown that shared standards reduce the cost of coordination. The principle is modern, but its ancient meaning is easy to feel. Agreement saves effort. People do not need to renegotiate every measure, doorway, wage, or container. Familiar units allow action to begin quickly. The hidden blueprint becomes partly numerical. Not every resident knows the calculations. Most experience their results. A worker receives a measured portion. A family occupies a measured plot. A merchant pays a measured weight. The city surrounds people with quantities they did not choose. This can feel reassuring when standards remain fair. It can feel oppressive when authorities control the definitions. Who decides the size of a ration? Who defines the length of required service? Numbers appear objective, yet someone selects what will be counted. The choice creates power. You return to the construction ground as shadows lengthen. The surveyors remove their stakes one by one. Only shallow marks remain where cords cross the earth. Soon workers will fill those lines with foundations. The geometry will disappear beneath walls. Visitors may admire the finished courtyard without noticing the measurements that shaped it. They will see doors, columns, and plaster. They will not see the calculation. That invisibility is the strength of the system. Order works best when it feels natural. A straight wall seems obvious after it stands. A balanced court feels inevitable once people gather inside. Yet both began as decisions expressed through units, chords, and careful comparison. You look across the marked ground while evening cools the dust. Empty rectangles wait in silence. They contain no bricks, no voices, and no ceremonies. Still, the future city is already present there. It exists as measured space. Night spreads above Uruk with extraordinary clarity, revealing stars from one horizon to the other. You stand within a sacred courtyard while lamps flicker against pale walls. The sky seems immeasurably close. Priests watch the darkness from raised platforms, noting the return of familiar lights. Their observations help mark seasons, festivals, planting times, and the changing rhythm of the year. Yet the stars are more than useful signs. They belong to a living order, to ancient Mesopotamian minds, heaven, earth, and the deep waters below form connected regions. Divine powers move through this layered universe, influencing weather, fertility, kingship, disease, and human fortune. The city exists inside that sacred structure. Its temples do not merely occupy valuable ground, they create places where the human world approaches the divine one. A high platform lifts ritual space above ordinary roofs. The ascent separates worshippers from streets, workshops, and household concerns. Each step changes the view. The surrounding plain sinks lower. The sanctuary rises toward open altar. You feel the intention without hearing any explanation. Height becomes holiness. Researchers associated with Oxford University have examined how Mesopotamian temples represented divine households. A deity was believed to possess a residence, possessions, attendants, food, clothing, and ceremonial obligations. The temple functioned as the god's earthly home. Its rooms were not arranged only for crowds. Some spaces served the unseen resident. Offerings entered. Sacred garments were prepared. Furniture and vessels remained ready for rituals performed beyond ordinary sight. The divine presence shaped the building. A city's principal deity also shaped civic identity. Uruk was strongly associated with Inanna, a powerful goddess linked with love, fertility, conflict, and political authority. Her character combined qualities that modern categories often separate. She could inspire tenderness and terror. She governed desire while standing close to warfare and kingship. Such complexity suited the city. Uruk itself offered wealth, beauty, danger, ambition, and sudden reversal. Its divine patron reflected the unsettled energy of urban life. You enter an imagined sanctuary where polished vessels stand beside a raised platform. Incense smoke softens the edges of the room. The deity's image may rest within the most restricted chamber. Only selected attendants approach it directly. The statue is not treated as decoration. Through ritual, it becomes a focus for divine presence. Priests wash it, clothe it, feed it, and carry it during ceremonies. To modern eyes, these actions may resemble theatre. To participants, they preserve the relationship between city and cosmos. Food offered to the deity eventually supports temple personnel, but its sacred meaning remains essential. The meal confirms that divine order continues. If the rituals fail, the danger is larger than an empty table. The city may lose protection. A storm, poor harvest, epidemic, or military defeat can be interpreted as evidence that harmony has weakened. Ritual specialists therefore watch for signs of divine displeasure. A damaged vessel may matter, an unusual birth may matter, a strange light in the sky may matter. The universe appears full of messages. Yale University scholars have studied later Mesopotamian omen traditions preserved on clay tablets. These records show specialists interpreting eclipses, animal behavior, weather, dreams, and unexpected events. Many detailed texts belong to periods later than early Uruk. Still, they reflect a long tradition of seeking order through signs. The sky becomes a vast tablet. Stars move according to patterns beyond human command. Their regularity offers reassurance, while rare events create unease. An eclipse can interrupt familiar darkness. A comet can cross paths that usually remain stable. When heaven behaves strangely, rulers grow nervous. A quirky tradition claimed that substitute kings could sometimes absorb danger predicted for the true ruler. A temporary figure received royal treatment, while the threatened monarch withdrew from view. This practice belongs to later Mesopotamian history, not the earliest phase of Uruk. Yet it reveals how seriously celestial warnings could be taken. Even kings might hide from the sky. You look toward the temple platform and wonder whether its orientation followed a sacred direction. Sunrise, moonrise, prevailing winds, or earlier foundations, and local terrain may all influence placement. Scholars continue debating how deliberately early temples mirrored celestial patterns. Some researchers see meaningful relationships between architecture and astronomical observation. Others warn that incomplete foundations can produce tempting alignments by chance. The question remains open. A building can face east without serving as an observatory. It can also carry several meanings at once. Morning light may illuminate a doorway for practical reasons and sacred ones. Ancient planners did not divide usefulness from symbolism as sharply as modern analysis sometimes does. A direction could be effective because it was holy. The city itself may have been imagined as a reflection of cosmic order. Major temples represented divine households, while streets and gates became routes for ceremonial movement. Processions temporarily transformed ordinary space. You hear drums beginning within the precinct. Attendants emerge carrying standards, vessels, woven cloth, and sacred objects. Residents gather along the route. The procession moves through familiar streets, but the streets no longer feel ordinary. Doorways become viewing places, crossings become pauses, gates become thresholds between ritual zones. The city performs its own meaning. A divine image travels from sanctuary to sanctuary, joining separate districts through movement. The route may reenact myths, renew alliances, or confirm the city's protection. People do not need to understand every theological detail. They feel the order through sound, colour, scent, and repetition. Bronze instruments ring beneath the open sky. Incense drifts above the crowd. Coloured textiles move through dust and sunlight. Children remember the spectacle long after they forget spoken prayers. Ceremony teaches through the senses. Researchers from the University of Pennsylvania have emphasized that Mesopotamian sacred landscapes included more than temple buildings. Canals, gates, fields, shrines, and roads could all acquire ritual importance. A city's holiness extended through movement. The sacred centre depended upon paths connecting it to the wider land. Offerings arrived from orchards, herds, marshes, and distant settlements. Ritual processions returned divine presence toward those same spaces. The relationship flowed in both directions. The countryside sustained the god's household. The god's household claimed to sustain the countryside. This exchange gave political authority a cosmic frame. Officials managing land or labour could present their work as service to divine order. A ruler repairing a sanctuary did more than improve a building. He restored balance between heaven and earth. Such claims were powerful because they transformed administration into duty. Disobedience could appear not merely unlawful, but dangerous to the whole community. Authority borrowed the shape of the cosmos. Still, belief was never perfectly uniform. Farmers, merchants, labourers, priests, and foreign visitors may have understood the gods differently. Private devotion could differ from official ritual. A mother praying for a sick child approached the divine world through personal fear. A ruler approached it through public ceremony and political necessity. The same temple held both concerns. Stanford University historians studying ritual power have noted that public ceremonies often strengthen communities by making invisible ideas physically present. A procession gives order a body. An offering gives loyalty a visible form. Architecture provides the stage. Uruk's monumental precincts may therefore have served as models of a larger universe. Elevated platforms suggested separation from ordinary ground. Restricted chambers suggested mysteries beyond public knowledge. Open courtyards allowed crowds to witness carefully controlled appearances. The building arranged the relationship between seen and unseen. You stand beneath the night sky as the lamps burn lower. The temple platform becomes a dark shape against the stars. Its outline resembles a mountain. Though no natural mountain rises across the southern plain, human hands have created one. Mountains often carried sacred meaning because they joined earth with heaven. In a flat landscape, raising a platform may have recreated that connection deliberately. The city built its own horizon. Perhaps this is why the sacred center feels larger than its walls. It does not merely organize neighborhoods. It explains where the city belongs within existence. Heaven stands above. Deep waters lie below. Human life occupies the fragile middle. The temple anchors that middle ground. Its rituals reassure residents that the layers remain connected. Its height makes the divine order visible. Its processions carry that order into crowded streets. Yet certainty never arrives. The stars remain distant. Floods still come. Crops still fail. People still suffer despite careful offerings. Faith continues because uncertainty continues. You watch one final lamp disappear behind a sanctuary doorway. Darkness settles across the courtyard. Above, the stars keep their silent positions. Perhaps the city mirrors heaven. Perhaps it only hopes to. Beyond Uruk, the plain opens into a web of settlements connected by water, dust, and cautious exchange. You travel northward beside a caravan carrying wool, grain, clay vessels, and sealed containers. The city gradually disappears behind heat. Its habits do not. At distant landing places, you begin seeing familiar objects. Beveled bowls appear beside storage rooms. Clay ceilings carry recognizable images. Buildings use repeated forms that seem strangely at home. The resemblance is not perfect. That makes it more revealing. Uruk's influence does not spread like a single army following one road. It travels through merchants and craftsmen, officials, migrants, marriages, and practical ideas borrowed by neighbouring communities. A useful method rarely remains private for long. You enter a settlement where local houses follow older traditions. Their walls curve around inherited plots, and their shrines preserve regional customs. Near the edge, however, stands a compound with unmistakable features. Its rooms surround ordered courtyards. Storage areas connect with spaces used for counting and sealing goods. The compound looks almost foreign. Researchers from Yale University have studied sites across Syria, Turkey, and Iran containing material associated with the Uruk expansion. Their findings confirm that southern Mesopotamian objects and administrative practices reached communities far beyond the city itself. Some settlements contain entire districts built in dramatized southern styles. Others preserve only scattered objects. This uneven pattern suggests several kinds of contact. Colonists may establish new enclaves near trade routes. Local elites may adopt prestigious customs. Craftspeople may imitate popular forms because merchants recognize them easily. Influence changes shape wherever it arrives. You pass a workshop where a seal cutter studies a cylindrical piece of stone. He carves animals and human figures into its surface using tiny tools. The finished seal can roll across wet clay, creating a continuous image. This technology travels efficiently. A seal is small enough to carry on a cord, yet powerful enough to identify a person, office, or household. It secures containers and confirms that someone accepted responsibility. The image becomes a portable identity. Local officials quickly understand its value. They may copy southern designs, combine them with regional animals, or invent entirely new scenes. The result is neither purely foreign nor purely local. It belongs to contact. One seal shows livestock moving toward a figure holding a staff. Another depicts vessels, plants, and attendants arranged in repeating order. The scenes communicate control, abundance, and ceremony. They also communicate membership within a wider administrative world. A merchant arriving with a familiar sealing may receive quicker trust. His cargo has passed through recognized procedures. The clay impression speaks on his behalf. Oxford University scholars have emphasized that early long-distance exchange relied heavily upon personal relationships and visible guarantees. Writing remained limited, while shared symbols helped strangers judge reliability. A seal could not prevent every deception. It could make deception easier to detect. You imagine a container closed in Uruk and opened weeks later near a northern river. The clay remains intact during the journey. Its impression proves that nobody disturbed the contents, unless someone has mastered an impressively patient form of fraud. The system allows authority to travel without its owner. Administrative habits spread beside the seals. Goods are grouped into categories. Deliveries receive marks. Storerooms become organized around controlled access. Local communities may already possess counting traditions. Uruk's methods offer additional layers of standardization. The borrowed system can manage larger quantities, more distant shipments, and increasingly complicated obligations. It brings efficiency. It also brings supervision. You stand beside a warehouse where jars from several regions rest against the walls. Their shapes reveal different origins. One contains oil, another carries grain. A smaller vessel holds valuable resin brought from distant uplands. The keeper does not need to know every producer. He needs reliable measures, seals, and records. Urban methods make distant goods legible. That transformation supports wider networks. Wool from the southern plain can move towards communities rich in timber or metal. Stone and minerals travel back through several exchanges. No single traveller crosses the entire distance. The system survives through repeated transfers. At each stage, someone receives, checks, stores, and redirects the cargo. Shared procedures reduce confusion between people speaking different dialects or following different customs. The blueprint spreads as behaviour. It does not require every settlement to resemble Uruk physically. A village can adopt sealing practices without building monumental platforms. A trading post can use standardized bowls without changing its sacred traditions. Ideas travel in pieces. Researchers from the University of Chicago have mapped pottery distributions showing how Uruk-related material appeared across broad regions. The evidence demonstrates substantial contact, yet the meaning of that contact remains disputed. Some scholars describe commercial colonies established by southern migrants. Others imagine flexible trading communities where local and foreign people live together. A third view emphasizes imitation. Local leaders may adopt Uruk styles because those styles signal access to wealth, distant goods, and powerful institutions. The soil rarely identifies motive clearly. A southern-style building might house immigrants. It might also belong to local officials displaying fashionable authority. Architecture can reveal identity. It can also disguise it. You enter a courtyard where workers eat from familiar rough bowls. Their clothing, speech, and tools reflect local traditions. Are they serving foreign administrators? Are they local labourers using imported containers? The bowls remain silent. A quirky fringe theory claims that Uruk's distant outposts formed a secret chain of sacred stations aligned with celestial routes. Enthusiasts connect sites across maps and interpret the pattern as ritual geography. Most historians remain unconvinced. Trade routes, rivers, mountain passes, and access to resources explain the locations more directly. Still, the idea carries a faint poetic truth. The settlements do form a constellation of contact across the ancient landscape. Each one shines briefly through surviving objects. You follow a river northward, where boats unload beside a fortified settlement. The surrounding hills contain materials unavailable near Uruk. Timber grows within reach, stone can be quarried, metals arrive from mountain communities farther beyond. This location matters because geography controls exchange. Uruk's representatives may seek dependable access to these resources. Local rulers may welcome southern traders because imported textiles and agricultural goods strengthen their own status. Cooperation benefits both sides. Until it does not, trade creates rivalry over routes, storage, tolls, and labour. A successful enclave can appear threatening to nearby communities. Foreign habits may inspire admiration, resentment, or both. The same seal that guarantees trust among merchants may symbolise outside control to residents. Cultural influence is rarely gentle for everyone. You notice changes within local craft production. Potters begin shaping vessels suited to wider exchange. Builders create larger storage areas. Officials adopt tools for counting and securing goods. These adjustments make the settlement more connected. They also make it more dependent upon distant demand. A workshop producing for local households can survive through familiar needs. A workshop serving long-distance networks depends upon routes remaining open. Prosperity gains a longer shadow. Stanford University researchers studying ancient networks have shown how connections can spread innovations rapidly while transmitting disruption just as efficiently. A blocked route affects distant partners. Political conflict delays materials. Environmental change shifts traffic toward rival settlements. The network behaves like a living structure. Its strength comes from connection. So does its vulnerability. Uruk's influence may even return altered. Foreign materials enter southern workshops, bringing unfamiliar colours, textures, and techniques. Craftspeople study imported stone and metal. Merchants carry stories about distant buildings, rituals, and rulers. The city sends out methods. It receives possibilities. No centre controls every exchange. Ideas change as they travel, then sometimes circle back in new forms. A borrowed seal design gains local animals. A building method adapts to colder weather. An administrative sign acquires a different meaning. The blueprint becomes plural. You stand upon a low ridge as evening spreads across a northern settlement. Smoke rises from houses built according to local custom. Near the river, a storage compound follows patterns associated with Uruk. Between them lies a busy open space where residents, migrants, and merchants exchange goods. Nobody has replaced the local world, something new has entered it. The first city's greatest expansion may not be measured only through territory. Its deeper reach appears wherever strangers begin trusting seals, organising warehouses, standardising containers, and coordinating labour through shared systems. Conquest is not required. Repetition is enough. A method becomes familiar. Familiarity becomes expectation. Expectation becomes structure. Far from Uruk, people begin living inside portions of its design. Night settles over the river, and sealed jars wait beneath guarded roofs. Their surfaces carry images pressed by hands from another landscape. The city is distant now. Its blueprint is already here. A dry wind moves through the streets, carrying dust against shuttered doorways and abandoned stalls. You notice the silence first, because a city this large should never sound completely still. Something has gone wrong. The grain market opens late. Several boats fail to arrive. Workers gather near a storehouse, waiting for portions that seem smaller than expected. An official stands beside the entrance, explaining that supplies must be conserved. His voice remains calm, but nobody listening feels reassured. Shortage exposes every hidden weakness. During prosperous seasons, the system appears orderly, grain reaches storage rooms, labourers receive food, and workshops continue producing goods for distant exchange. When harvests fail, that appearance begins cracking. The city still contains walls, temples, records, and officials, yet none of those structures can create barley from empty fields. The numbers continue. The food does not. Researchers associated with the University of Chicago have studied ancient settlement patterns showing repeated periods of growth, contraction, and abandonment across Mesopotamia. Their findings confirm that urban life did not advance through steady progress. Cities expanded, struggled, fragmented, and sometimes recovered. Environmental pressure could intensify every existing conflict. Reduced water, damaged canals, salinized soil, or changing river channels placed enormous strain upon agricultural production. Barley tolerates difficult conditions better than many crops, but even barley has limits. You walk beside a field where pale crusts gather across the surface. Salt remains after irrigation water evaporates beneath relentless heat. Over many seasons, this accumulation can weaken the soil. Farmers respond by changing crops, leaving plots unused, or seeking new land. Each solution shifts pressure elsewhere. A field problem becomes an urban problem. Officials demand deliveries because workers and dependents still need food. Farmers resist because their households also face hunger. The institution records obligations based upon expected harvests. Nature ignores expected harvests. A clerk may lower a total delay collection or insist that the original amount remains due. His decision can determine whether one family survives comfortably or sells property. Administrative order becomes personal suffering. You pass a household where several storage jars stand nearly empty. A woman shakes one container, listening for the faint movement of grain. The sound is barely audible. She measures the remaining food with greater care than any official tablet could describe. Each meal now belongs to a calculation involving children, elders, and uncertain days. Scarcity turns domestic love into arithmetic. Wealthier households possess deeper reserves. They store grain, animals, silver, cloth, and obligations owed by others. Poorer families possess labor. When food prices rise, inequality widens quickly. A household may borrow grain with repayment expected after harvest. If the next harvest also fails, debt grows. Property changes hands quietly. A field becomes security for a loan. A child enters service. A debtor agrees to work for someone with fuller storerooms. The city does not need chains to create confinement. Dependents can tighten through contracts, hunger, and inherited obligation. Yale University historians studying Mesopotamian social records have shown that debt, slavery, and dependent labor appeared within later documented periods. Earlier evidence remains less complete, though unequal relationships clearly existed. Scholars still debate how much large building projects relied upon communal service, paid labor, dependent workers, or direct coercion. The categories may overlap. A farmer might owe several days of labor as part of civic duty. A temple dependent might receive regular support while lacking freedom to leave. A captive might work beside both. From a distance, they look like one crew. Their experiences are not the same. You stand near a construction site where baskets of clay move upward in an endless line. Supervisors count workers and urge the slower ones forward. The platform rises steadily. Some labourers may feel pride in building a monument visible across the plain. Others may feel only heat, pain, and the weight of another basket. Public greatness can hide private exhaustion. A council decree might prove that a canal requires urgent repair. That decree does not reveal whether workers volunteered gladly. Authority often describes necessity. Those carrying the tools experience demandos. A quirky legend tells of builders hiding messages inside bricks, hoping future generations would learn who truly raised the monuments. No clear evidence confirms such secret complaints at Uruk. Still fingerprint. A mane. A thumb pressed into wet clay becomes the closest thing many workers leave to a name. You touch one impression and imagine the hand withdrawing quickly. The worker does not know that the mark will survive longer than the official who counted him. The city remembers labour accidentally. Unrest may begin with small refusals. A crew arrives late. A household conceals part of its grain. A merchant redirects goods toward a more profitable settlement. A local official alters totals before sending them upward. Resistance does not always appear as open rebellion. Sometimes it looks like delay. Sometimes it looks like silence. Institutions respond with closer supervision. More seals appear, more records are compared. More officials stand near doors. Control creates additional control. Yet tighter oversight also creates resentment. People who feel mistrusted may become less willing to cooperate. The system begins consuming energy simply to preserve itself. Researchers at Oxford University have noted that early states often faced a difficult balance between extraction and stability. Authorities needed surplus to support specialists, defences, and public works. Taking too much weakened the communities producing that surplus. The city depended upon people it could not afford to destroy. This tension has no perfect solution. A ruler may reduce demands during crisis, protecting households while weakening central stores. Another may insist upon collection, preserving institutions while increasing flight and resistance. Both choices carry risk. You move toward the city edge, where several homes stand empty. Doorways remain open, and roof beams have been removed for reuse. The families may have moved toward better land, safer settlements, or relatives elsewhere. Departure becomes another form of protest. A city can command labour only while people remain within reach. Population loss reduces food deliveries, weakens maintenance, and empties workshops. Remaining households carry heavier obligations. The burden pushes more people away. Decline can become self-sustaining. Trade networks also begin faltering during instability. Distant partners prefer safer routes. Merchants avoid regions where theft, tolls, or political conflict threaten cargo. Imported timber and metal arrive less often. Craft specialists lose materials. Their skills remain, but their work slows. A seal cutter without stone becomes an ordinary hungry person. The city's complexity, once a source of strength, now creates delicate dependencies. Farmers need functioning canals. Workshops need imported resources. Officials need reliable records, labourers need regular food. When several links weaken together, the entire structure trembles. Stanford University researchers studying complex systems describe how tightly connected networks can experience cascading failure. The language is modern, but the ancient reality feels immediate. One broken channel reduces harvests, reduced harvests shrink rations, smaller rations weaken work crews. Repairs then become slower. The original damage grows. You hear an argument near a distribution building. A worker insists that his family received less than the tablet records. The clerk points toward the marks and refuses responsibility. Clay has become more believable than hunger. People gather around them, listening. No violence begins, but the mood changes. The system claims certainty. The body knows otherwise. Perhaps officials investigate. Perhaps the complaint disappears into procedure. Perhaps if the worker learns that written order protects those who control writing. Law, measurement, and record-keeping can restrain abuse. They can also make injustice appear proper. A decision becomes harder to challenge once sealed. The hidden blueprint contains this danger from the beginning. Every system that coordinates strangers also creates positions from which some people can command others. Storage supports survival, but those guarding storage gain leverage. Walls offer protection, but gatekeepers control movement. Records preserve obligations, but scribes decide what enters the archive. Order is never neutral. You return to the silent market as evening approaches. A few traders arrange modest piles of onions, dates, fish, and grain. Prices rise through whispered bargaining. A hungry family walks away from one stall without buying anything. Nearby, a wealthy household receives a private delivery through a side entrance. The city remains beautiful from a distance. Its skyline still rises beneath the fading sun. Sacred buildings glow above crowded roofs. Yet grandeur cannot hide the uneven distribution of fear. Some residents worry about losing profit. Others worry about losing dinner. That difference shapes every crisis. You hear a distant drum calling workers or guards toward another duty. The sound crosses neighborhoods where resentment, loyalty, exhaustion, and hope exist together. Nobody knows whether the system will bend or break. Perhaps repairs succeed, perhaps water returns, perhaps stored grain carries the population through another difficult season. Cities survive many crises through adaptation. They also preserve the conditions that create future ones. The streets darken slowly, doors close, lamps appear, and the market empties. Uruk still stands. But beneath its ordered surfaces, countless people measure the city by what it demands, what it gives, and what it refuses to see. The blueprint promises cooperation. Its cracks reveal the cost. Dawn rises over another Mesopotamian city, centuries removed from Uruk's first great expansion. You stand beside a temple platform while clerks unlock storerooms and labourers gather near a canal landing. The names have changed. The system feels familiar. A ruler governs from a palace compound. Priests maintain sacred households. Scribes record deliveries, debts, fields, animals, and work assignments. Boats move food through controlled channels. Walls mark civic territory. Surplus supports specialists who do not produce their own grain. Uruk's original arrangement has endured. It does not survive as one untouched plan. Cities reshape the pattern according to local needs, political ambitions, environmental pressures, and inherited traditions. The essential structure remains recognizable. Researchers associated with Yale University have shown that later Mesopotamian cities continued relying upon institutions that gathered agricultural surplus and redirected it toward labour, worship, trade, and government. The scale becomes larger. The records become more detailed. Palaces emerge beside temples as major centres of authority. Kings control estates, armies, workshops, and diplomatic networks. The sacred institution no longer stands alone at the centre of organised life. Power gains another household. You enter a palace courtyard where messengers wait beneath shaded walls. One carries news from a distant governor. Another brings tablets listing grain stored within provincial towns. The ruler's reach depends upon these records. He cannot inspect every field personally, and he cannot watch every worker or count every animal. Instead, officials transform distant realities into written totals. The kingdom arrives on clay. A report states that a canal has been cleared. Another claims that a district delivered the required barley. The ruler sees orderly signs rather than muddy labour. Administration creates the comforting illusion that the land can be understood from one room. Naturally, local officials may adjust figures when reality becomes inconvenient. Bureaucracy inherits mathematics and also inherits creative optimism. Still, the system works often enough to endure. Standard records allow decisions across great distances. Governors receive instructions, and storehouses issue supplies. Work crews gather for construction, harvest, and military service. The city's blueprint expands into a territorial network. Uruk organised strangers within one urban centre. Later states organised cities, villages, fields, and roads beneath wider authority. The principle remains the same. Gather resources, count them, redirect them. You travel toward where monumental buildings rise near busy harbours. Its rulers sponsor temples, maintain canals, and command labour across broad estates. Administrative tablets multiply into astonishing numbers. Researchers from the University of Pennsylvania have studied archives showing how officials tracked livestock, textiles, grain, land, and personnel with remarkable precision. One sheep can enter several records. Someone counts it alive, someone records its wool, someone records the worker responsible for feeding it. Eventually, someone records its disappearance, ideally with a convincing explanation. The system becomes almost obsessive. That obsession reflects vulnerability. Large institutions depend upon goods passing through many hands. Every transfer creates an opportunity for loss, theft, delay, or misunderstanding. Records protect authority from uncertainty. They also bury officials beneath their own paperwork. A scribe may spend an entire day checking totals created by other scribes. Supervisors inspect clerks who inspect workers who inspect baskets. The city produces administration to manage complexity. Administration creates additional complexity. Yet this layered structure allows specialization to deepen. Metalworkers receive imported materials. Textile workshops employ large groups. Builders construct temples, palaces, walls, and tombs far beyond household scale. Artists create objects whose beauty depends upon stored food and organized time. Surplus becomes culture. You watch a musician performing within a ceremonial hall. Her instrument contains wood, shell, metal, and bitumes gathered from distant regions. Every material reached the city through trade routes protected by agreements, officials, and armed force. Her music seems delicate. Its existence depends upon a vast economic machine. This is why the first urban model endures. It converts agricultural production into possibilities impossible within isolated households. A farmer produces more than his family consumes. Institutions gather part of that excess. Specialists then receive support while pursuing work unrelated to farming. The arrangement produces writing, architecture, scholarship, law, and luxury. It also produces hierarchy. Later rulers understand this connection clearly. They present themselves as protectors of irrigation, providers of justice, builders of temples, and guardians of abundance. Royal inscriptions praise canal digging almost as eagerly as military victory. Water management proves legitimacy. A king who repairs channels claims to restore prosperity. A king who neglects them risks crop failure, discontent, and divine criticism. Oxford University historians have noted that Mesopotamian kingship often joined practical administration with sacred responsibility. The ruler maintains order because the gods supposedly expect it. Political duty receives cosmic approval. You stand beside workers clearing silt from a major canal. Their baskets rise and fall under the heat while an official records the assigned crews. The king may later claim personal credit. He probably never enters the mud. History has always possessed generous definitions of supervision. Still, royal sponsorship matters. Large projects require authority capable of gathering workers, food, tools, and protection. A neglected channel can weaken several settlements. A repaired one can revive fields across an entire district. Infrastructure becomes political memory. Cities preserve the names of rulers who build, restore, and enlarge. They rarely preserve the names of those carrying mud. The system remembers command more easily than effort. A fringe tradition claims that certain Mesopotamian rulers inherited secret tablets describing the perfect organization of cities. These legendary documents supposedly contain divine plans for temples, canals, law, and kingship. No archaeological evidence confirms such a complete hidden manual, yet the story reflects something real. Later societies did inherit a blueprint, though not as one magical object. They inherited habits, professions, measurements, stories, and institutions. Knowledge survived through copying. Scribes reproduced old signs and texts. Builders studied earlier foundations. Priests repeated ceremonial sequences. Officials reused administrative formats because familiar forms reduced uncertainty. Tradition became a practical technology. You enter a scribal school, where students copy lists of signs onto damp tablets. The room smells of clay, reed, and youthful frustration. A teacher checks their work. One student has written a sign too broadly. Another has placed a number in the wrong position. Correction follow. Through such small exercises, systems outlive dynasties. A palace may burn, a ruler may fall, a city may lose political importance. The trained habits continue elsewhere. A displaced scribe carries knowledge into another court. A merchant introduces familiar measures within a new market. A builder adapts old construction methods to unfamiliar ground. The blueprint travels through people. Scholars continue debating whether Uruk's influence should be understood as the origin of later Mesopotamian institutions or as one powerful stage within a longer shared development. Some emphasize continuity. Others warn that later cities created distinct systems shaped by new political conditions. Both positions contain truth. No civilization remains unchanged for thousands of years. Yet certain problems return with remarkable persistence. How should food be stored? Who maintains canals? How can strangers trust a shipment? Who records labour? Who decides where surplus goes? Uruk's solutions proved durable because the problems were durable. Later cities refine those solutions rather than abandoning them. Records become legal contracts, tax accounts, royal correspondence, and scholarly texts. Temples remain important while palaces gain authority. Canals link urban centres with provincial lands. Walls grow larger. Markets widen. The structure becomes more complicated without losing its foundation. You walk through a later city at sunset. A merchant seals a jar beside the quay. A clerk records barley entering storage. Priests prepare offerings within a sanctuary. Workers repair a gate before darkness. Each action belongs to a system older than anyone performing it. Nobody needs to know where the pattern began. They only need to trust that tomorrow resembles today closely enough for obligations to continue. That may be the true source of endurance. Institutions survive when they turn repetition into expectation. People plant because channels will carry water. Merchants travel because seals will be recognized. Workers appear because food will be issued. The system becomes ordinary. Once ordinary, it becomes difficult to imagine life without it. Night gathers over the rooftops. Lamps appear within offices, temples, workshops, and homes. Clay tablets wait on shelves. Grain rests behind guarded doors. Water moves through channels beneath the darkness. The first city's deepest achievement is not a single monument. It's a pattern that teaches later societies how to organize strangers, resources, memory, and power. The buildings change. The blueprint remains. A trench cuts through the mound beneath a white morning sky. You stand beside its edge while archaeologists study walls that refuse to explain themselves. One foundation turns sharply toward a courtyard. Another continues beneath a later building. A doorway appears where no visible path approaches it. The city seems to offer a plan. Then it withdraws the plan again. Every exposed surface belongs to a particular moment. One wall may stand for 50 years, disappear, and return in a different form. Another survives through repeated repairs. A street may narrow slowly as houses advance into public ground. What looks like one city is actually many cities compressed together. This is the central problem. Archaeologists excavate downward through time, but urban life spreads sideways across space. The deeper they dig, the less of each period they can expose without destroying what lies above. A complete map remains impossible. Researchers from the University of Chicago have used survey excavation and remote sensing to reconstruct Uruk's development. Their findings confirm that the settlement changed dramatically across centuries. Population shifted, monumental areas expanded, neighbourhoods appeared, vanished, and reorganized. Yet the evidence still permits several interpretations. One group of scholars sees strong central planning. They point toward monumental precincts, standardized construction, organized labor, and major boundaries. Such features suggest authorities capable of directing large projects across wide areas. You can imagine officials standing over measured ground, assigning crews, approving walls, and protecting sacred routes. The city, in this interpretation, grows through command. Another group argues for gradual formation. Houses cluster around useful paths. Workshops gather near transport routes. Markets appear where movement already concentrates. Sacred buildings influence nearby space without controlling every street. The city, in this view, grows through accumulation. No single person understands the whole pattern. Order emerges because thousands of residents repeat practical choices. A third position combines both ideas. Monumental districts may follow deliberate plans, while residential quarters grow through local decisions. Central authorities organize selected spaces, but leave much of daily urban development to households and neighborhoods. This mixed model feels especially plausible. Cities often contain several kinds of order at once. A palace courtyard can be perfectly measured while the lane behind it bends around an inconvenient kitchen wall. Uruk may have been equally human. Oxford University scholars have warned that apparent symmetry can mislead. Excavation plans often combine structures from different dates because surviving walls overlap confusingly. A beautiful rectangle on a modern drawing may never have existed as one complete building. Some rooms could belong to separate phases. The plan becomes clearer on paper than it was in life. You watch an archaeologist brush dust from a wall junction. The bricks appear to meet cleanly. Then a slight difference in colour reveals that one wall was added much later. A single corner changes the interpretation of an entire building. Was this room part of the original design? Was it added after a change in ritual, ownership, or function? The soil provides sequence, but rarely motive. Researchers rely upon pottery, brick types, floor levels, seals, and construction techniques to establish relative dates. Each clue narrows possibility. None restores the missing conversation. The builder who ordered the alteration remains sealant. So does the family who lost access when a doorway was sealed. Architecture preserves decisions without explanation. A mainstream historical fact remains secure. Uruk became one of the largest urban centres of the ancient world during the 4th millennium before the Common Era. Its monumental buildings, administrative tablets, craft production, and long-distance contacts demonstrate extraordinary social complexity. The uncertainty lies not in whether the city was organised. It lies in how that organisation worked. Did temple officials control most land and labour? Did powerful households negotiate among themselves? Did neighbourhood councils manage streets, wells, and local disputes? The archives preserve the institutional activity more clearly than informal cooperation. This creates an uneven picture. A family agreement spoken in a courtyard disappears. A temple account written on clay may survive for thousands of years. The surviving record therefore favours people who employed scribes. Silence can distort history. Yale University researchers examining ancient economies have emphasised this imbalance. Administrative documents show what institutions counted, but not everything people exchanged, shared, or resisted. A worker may receive grain through an official system while trading fish privately with neighbours. A household may owe labour publicly while managing property through unwritten agreements. The city contains visible and invisible economies. Only one enters the archive easily. A fringe tidbit complicates the picture further. Some enthusiasts claim hidden chambers beneath Uruk's sacred districts contain lost plans of the entire city. The story imagines sealed rooms filled with master drawings, celestial calculations, and instructions from forgotten rulers. No credible excavation has revealed such a chamber. The tale persists because uncertainty invites treasure. People prefer one secret room to thousands of incomplete decisions. A single blueprint feels satisfying. Human history is rarely so polite. You move beside a table covered with maps from different excavation seasons. Lines change from one drawing to another. A wall once considered ceremonial becomes a storage boundary. A presumed gate becomes a drainage opening. Interpretations shift because new evidence rearranges older certainty. This is not failure. It is how archaeology breathes. Stanford University researchers working with computational models have explored how urban patterns can emerge from repeated local behaviour. Their simulations show that movement, access, property, and attraction can produce organised networks without complete central control. The model does not prove that Uruk formed this way. It demonstrates that apparent design does not require one designer. That distinction matters. A straight route may result from official planning. It may also survive because generations find it useful. A crowded district may appear chaotic while following deeply stable customs concerning privacy, access, and inheritance. Order can hide inside irregularity. Scholars continue debating whether Uruk's sacred precincts served as political capitals, ceremonial centres, economic headquarters, or combinations of all three. The buildings contain halls, courts, platforms, and storage spaces. Their forms suggest several functions. Their labels come from modern interpretation. A room called a temple may have hosted administration. A building called a palace may never have housed a king. Names can create confidence where evidence remains uncertain. You enter an exposed hall whose floor bears traces of repeated activity. Small finds suggest storage, sealing, and controlled movement. The room might support ritual preparation. It might support economic management. Those activities may never have been separate. Modern categories divide religion, government, trade, and household. Uruk's inhabitants may have experienced them as overlapping duties within one sacred social order. The debate becomes harder because the questions themselves are modern. Perhaps asking whether the temple controlled the economy already assumes a division that did not exist. Perhaps economic management was a religious act. Perhaps authority was sacred because it organized survival. The city resists simple translation. Nature also obscures the plan. Mud brick melts into surrounding soil, flood deposits cover streets. Rebuilding cuts through older foundations. Agricultural activity disturbs shallow remains. Even careful excavation destroys part of what it studies. Once a layer is removed, it cannot be replaced. Every trench is therefore a decision about what can be sacrificed to understand what lies beneath. Archaeologists record photographs, measurements, samples, and drawings before proceeding. Still, something always disappears. Knowledge comes through controlled loss. You stand at the trench edge as afternoon light turns the walls golden. The exposed foundations form patterns that seem meaningful from one angle and confusing from another. That uncertainty feels appropriate. Uruk was not created in one moment. It was negotiated through generations of construction, ritual, conflict, repair, and habit. A perfect map may never exist because the city itself was never perfectly finished. It remained in motion. The hidden blueprint may be central planning. It may be accumulated custom. It may be a shifting agreement between powerful institutions and ordinary households. The ruins permit each possibility without surrendering completely to any. Dust settles across the foundations. The lines remain open. Rain touches the windows of a modern tower, turning electric light into long silver streaks. You stand high above a city whose streets stretch farther than sight, carrying people through tunnels, bridges, offices, markets, and homes. Everything appears new. Almost nothing is entirely new. The materials have changed, yet the oldest urban questions remain. Water must reach every household. Food must cross great distances. Waste must leave crowded districts. Strangers must cooperate without knowing one another. Someone still measures the land. Someone still guards the stores. Someone still records who owes what. The first city survives through problems that never disappeared. You descend into a station where thousands move according to signs, barriers, platforms, and scheduled arrivals. Nobody needs to explain the entire system. You follow its instructions because everyone else follows them. A marked line tells you where to wait. A gate decides whether you may pass. A screen turns distant movement into numbers. The city guides your body through silent commands. Uruk used walls, courtyards, canals, seals, and measured entrances. Modern streets use signals, tickets, cameras, permits, and painted boundaries. The technologies differ greatly. The principle remains familiar. Shared space requires invisible agreements. People must accept directions as standards, schedules, and records created by strangers. Without that acceptance, urban life slows into confusion. Researchers at Harvard University have studied how cities depend upon networks connecting transportation, resources, communication, and social institutions. Their findings show that urban strength grows from cooperation across many separate systems. No single system can support the whole. Electricity depends upon fuel, machinery, workers, and distribution. Food depends upon farms, roads, storage, refrigeration, payment, and trust. A broken link can disturb millions of lives. The city remains powerful because it joins fragile parts. You walk through a market filled with fruit from distant climates, fish from remote waters, cloth woven across oceans, and tools assembled from materials gathered worldwide. The abundance feels immediate. Its origins remain hidden. You see the apple, not the orchard worker. You see the metal, not the mine. You see the finished package, not the chain of hands that moved it. Urban life conceals distance by making goods appear close. Uruk performed the same transformation on a smaller scale. Timber, stone, metal, grain, fish, reeds, and wool entered one organised centre. The city gathered scattered landscapes into daily sessions. Modern cities continue gathering the world. They simply do it with greater speed and quieter machineries. You pause beside a warehouse where automated doors open beneath cold white lights. Containers arrive with codes printed across their sides. Workers scan each item. Computers update quantities in distant offices. The objects no longer need clay seals. They still need identity. A shipment must prove where it came from, who controls it, and whether anyone altered it. The ancient impression pressed into wet clay has become a digital record. Trust remains an administrative achievement. A quirky theory sometimes appears in popular discussions claiming that modern computer systems secretly reproduce sacred Mesopotamian mathematics. The argument usually stretches coincidence into certainty. There is no evidence for an unbroken hidden code, yet the comparison contains a gentler truth. Both systems reduce complicated reality into symbols. Grain becomes a mark, money becomes a number, a person becomes an entry attached to permissions, property, and obligations. The city sees through categories. You enter a government office where forms move across desks. Names, addresses, dates, payments, and approvals fill the pages. The atmosphere feels far removed from ancient clay tablets. The purpose is recognizable. Records allow institutions to act beyond personal memory. They preserve decisions, assign responsibility, and make people visible to distant officials. A form can open a doorway. It can also close one. The same structure that protects rights can create exclusion. A missing document may matter more than a spoken explanation. Administrative memory remains powerful because it appears neutral. Numbers do not raise their voices. They still decide outcomes. Scholars continue debating whether modern cities inherit direct institutional traditions from ancient Mesopotamia or merely face similar problems with similar solutions. There is no simple line connecting one city to every later metropolis. Cultures rise independently. Technologies spread through complex routes. Political systems change beyond recognition. Yet certain patterns return because human needs return. Large populations require storage, transport, law, measurement, identity, and shared meaning. These necessities create familiar structures even when no conscious imitation exists. The blueprint may therefore be less like a copied drawing and more like a recurring response. Where strangers gather, systems emerge. Where systems emerge, power gathers beside them. You cross a financial district where towers reflect the evening sky. Their highest floors remain inaccessible to most people moving below. Height still signals importance. Restricted entrances still organize status. Public plazas open around buildings whose decisions affect distant lives. The sacred platform has vanished, yet elevation continues speaking. Perhaps people never stopped associating height with authority. Courts, banks, offices, and government chambers still use steps, columns, guarded doors, and carefully controlled approaches. Architecture shapes emotion long before anyone reads a sign. You feel smaller beneath a high ceiling. You slow near security barriers. You lower your voice inside formal spaces. Buildings teach behavior without admitting that they are teaching. Stanford University researchers studying social environments have shown how physical design influences movement, attention, and interaction. Streets encourage gathering or discourage it. Benches invite rest or prevent it. Lighting creates welcome or suspicion. The city is never merely a container. It participates in human choices. A narrow sidewalk pushes strangers together. A private courtyard separates wealth from public noise. A distant suburb changes how families travel, work, and meet. Design becomes destiny in small daily portions. You walk toward a residential block where windows glow above a quiet street. Behind each one, private life continues beyond public view. Meals are prepared, children sleep, arguments soften behind closed doors. The household remains the hidden foundation beneath urban scale. Governments count residents by thousands or millions. Families experience the city through rent, water, food, safety, work, and distance. A statistic describes the population. A doorway contains the life. The oldest urban tension remains here. The city needs households, yet its demands can overwhelm them. Long journeys consume time. High costs narrow choices. Work schedules enter private evenings. The system supports survival while claiming pieces of every day. You hear traffic moving beyond the window. Its steady sound resembles water passing through a channel. Vehicles carry workers, food, medicine, messages, and waste. Roads form modern arteries across districts that depend upon constant circulation. When movement stops, anxiety begins quicken. A delayed train, blocked road, or failed delivery reveals how little independence urban life allows. Convenience is organized dependence. That dependence can create solidarity. Neighbors share supplies during emergencies. Workers repair damaged systems. Communities gather around schools, parks, markets, and places of worship. Strangers become familiar through repetition. Yet dependence can also deepen inequality. Some districts receive clean water, shade, reliable transport, and protection. Others wait longer, travel farther, and suffer greater risk. The blueprint never distributes comfort evenly. Researchers from Columbia University have documented how urban design often reflects political choices about investment, access, and exclusion. Roads, parks, housing, and public services do not appear without decisions. Those decisions favour certain futures. A map may look objective. Its consequences are human. The first city placed some people near sacred centres. Storage, water, and power. Others lived farther from those advantages. Modern cities repeat the pattern through property values, zoning, transport, and controlled access. The names change. The distances remain meaningful. You stand at a crowded intersection while thousands of lights appear across the skyline. Each light marks a room where someone works, waits, worries, eats, or sleeps. From here, the city looks unified. Inside it, lives remain uneven. Perhaps this is why the hidden blueprint feels unsettling. It reveals that urban order has always required both cooperation and control. The city protects people by organizing them. It also organizes them so thoroughly that escape becomes difficult. You depend upon the systems you rarely see, maintained by workers you rarely meet, governed through decisions made in rooms you may never enter. Still, the city offers extraordinary gifts. It gathers knowledge, medicine, music, food, art, memory, and conversation within reach. It allows people born far apart to share streets, ideas, and futures. It creates possibilities no isolated household could produce. The blueprint is neither benevolent nor cruel. It magnifies human intention. A generous system distributes abundance. A fearful system builds barriers. An ambitious system reaches upward. An unequal system hides suffering behind impressive walls. The city becomes a mirror too large for one person to recognize. You look down at the streets, where movement continues beneath the night. Signals change. Doors open. Trains arrive. The ancient pattern remains inside every measured parcel. Guarded entrance, stored resource, scheduled journey, and written identity. It is present though invisible. And now the pace begins to soften. The traffic below becomes a distant murmur, no louder than water passing beyond reeds. Window lights fade one by one, leaving darker spaces between them. You let your attention rest upon those spaces. There is nothing you need to solve tonight. Cities have carried their mysteries for thousands of years, and they can carry them a little longer. The oldest streets are quiet beneath layers of earth. Their builders no longer hurry, their clerks no longer count, their gates stand open to the night. You breathe slowly. The tower around you seems less permanent now. Glass, steel, clay, and stone all belong to time. Every wall eventually softens. Every road changes direction. Every record waits for someone who may misunderstand it. But although perhaps that is comforting, no system is final. No blueprint holds every life completely. Far below, a final vehicle turns through an empty crossing. Its lights pass across wet pavement, then disappear between sleeping buildings. You imagine another light moving across an ancient canal, carried by a boatman returning home beneath the stars. The water accepts both reflection. The city rests around you, vast and unfinished. Its patterns remain hidden inside habit, memory, duty, and hope. You do not need to name them. You only need to notice how gently they continue. Perhaps the first city was planned by rulers. Perhaps it emerged from countless ordinary choices. Perhaps every city is still being invented by people who believe they are only completing today's work. The night gives no answer. It simply gathers the rooftops, the silent offices, the empty platforms, and the buried walls into one calm darkness. And perhaps the story is not yet complete. Good night.